For 4 days, the world watched the surface of the North Atlantic. Ships dragged the water with sonar. Aircraft dropped buoys into the gray swells. We were waiting for 5 men to emerge from the deep. The truth was far quieter. They had been gone since the first hour of their descent. June 18th started as a routine dive. The Polar Prince idled on the surface while the Titan slipped beneath the waves. On board were Stockton Rush, Paul-Henri Nargeolet, Hamish Harding, and Shat Sada and Suleiman Dawood. They were headed for the most famous shipwreck in history. Contact was lost 1 hour and 45 minutes into the dive. This was not immediately treated as a disaster. Communication systems on the submersible had failed before. The surface crew waited for the vehicle to drop its weights and float back up. Hours passed. The horizon remained empty. Panic began to set in as the sun went down. The Coast Guard was notified. An international search effort was mobilized almost overnight. Aircraft flew grid patterns over the vast, empty ocean. The assumption was that the men were trapped inside a metal tube, slowly running out of air. News networks around the globe locked onto the story. They displayed countdown clocks on television screens. The oxygen supply was estimated at 96 hours. Every passing minute felt like a physical weight to the millions of people watching from home. We imagined them in the cold dark. Hope flared briefly when sonar buoys detected banging sounds. Rhythmic noises echoed through the water column. People wanted to believe it was Paul-Henri Nargeolet tapping on the hull. He was a veteran diver who knew how to signal for help. We wanted a rescue story. The reality was completely different. The ocean does not announce when it has already won. Those banging noises were likely just ocean traffic or natural acoustic anomalies. By the time the search had even begun, the men were already gone. They never knew they were dying. Stockton Rush believed innovation required breaking rules. He ignored industry standards and bypassed certification. His company OceanGate built the hull out of carbon fiber instead of solid titanium. Experts warned him repeatedly that carbon fiber was the wrong material for deep ocean pressure. He dismissed them all. Down in the twilight zone, the pressure builds relentlessly. Every 10 meters adds another atmosphere of weight. The carbon fiber hull was subjected to immense stress. The material is strong under tension, but unpredictable under compression. Microscopic fractures were likely forming with every previous dive. Past 3,000 meters, the darkness is absolute. The temperature hovers just above freezing. The only sounds inside the Titan would have been the hum of electronics and the occasional cracking of the hull. Rush had told passengers that cracking was normal. It was a warning sign they were taught to ignore. Failure happened in a fraction of a second. The hull gave way under the crushing weight of the water above. There was no time to react. There was no time to feel fear. The collapse was faster than any human nervous system could register. Investigators later confirmed the brutal truth. The implosion occurred in less than 40 milliseconds. The human brain takes at least 100 milliseconds to process pain. They went from being alive and anticipating a view of the Titanic to simply not existing. It was an instant erasure. A remote-operated vehicle finally reached the seafloor on the 4th day. The countdown clocks had run out of time. The world was bracing for a slow suffocation tragedy. Instead, the camera lights illuminated jagged pieces of metal and carbon fiber resting in the silt. The debris field was scattered just hundreds of meters from the bow of the Titanic. They had almost reached their destination. The 2 titanium end bells lay separated in the mud. The carbon cylinder was completely shattered. The search for survivors officially ended right there. Families were notified before the public. The realization washed over the world that the search had been a ghost hunt. We had spent millions of dollars and thousands of hours looking for men who were dead before the first rescue ship even left port. Looking back, the signs of impending disaster were everywhere. Former employees had raised safety concerns. Submarine pioneers had written letters begging the company to stop. But the allure of the deep is powerful. It blinds people to the math that governs the bottom of the world. The Titanic wreck remains a graveyard. Now holds 5 more souls. The ocean absorbed the event without a ripple on the surface. It is a vast and indifferent environment. It does not care about our ambitions or our arrogance. We often treat the deep sea as a theme park. We assume technology will always protect us. But the margins for error at 4,000 meters are non-existent. You are entirely dependent on the integrity of your vessel. When it fails, the ocean reclaims the space instantly. Dread is the only logical response to this environment. We are terrestrial creatures, entirely unsuited for the abyss. We build tiny bubbles of air and sink them into a crushing void. It is a miracle that we survive the trip at all. The story of the Titan will be debated for decades. Engineering schools will use it as a case study in fatal design choices. But for the ocean, it was just a minor physical correction. A hollow space was crushed. The water filled the void. This tragedy forces us to confront our fragility. We send robots to space and probes to the deepest trenches. When we send ourselves, we carry a massive risk. The deep does not respect our curiosity. It only respects structural integrity. The 5 men believed they were safe. They trusted the pilot and the machine. They paid for a unique experience and received a sudden end. There is a dark wonder in how quickly a life can be extinguished when the ocean decides to close its hand. Silence returned to the wreckage site almost immediately. The deep is exceptionally quiet. The implosion was a brief, violent noise, followed by an eternity of stillness. The scattered pieces will slowly rust and become part of the sea floor, just like the ship they came to see. We are left with the cold realization of our limits. The ocean will always win a direct confrontation. We can only visit temporarily by hiding inside perfectly calculated equations. When a math is wrong, nothing travels back to the surface. Right now, sitting still, you're already carrying a column of air on your shoulders. It stretches from the top of your head to the edge of space. You have never once noticed it. This is exactly the trick the ocean plays, only much worse. At sea level, this weight equals 1 atmosphere. Your body pushes outward with the exact same force. You are perfectly balanced. The moment you step into the ocean, that balance begins to tip. Water is roughly 800 times denser than air. Just 10 meters down, the pressure doubles. You're now experiencing 2 atmospheres of weight. The air in your lungs compresses to half its volume. Your ears ache as the water tries to push your eardrums inward. This is merely the shallow end. Hydrostatic pressure is a relentless mathematical reality. It does not fluctuate or hesitate. For every additional 10 meters you descend, you add another atmosphere of pressure. It is a slow and steady accumulation of weight that eventually becomes incomprehensible. By the time you reach 100 meters, light is already fading. The weight of the water is now 10 times what you feel on the surface. A human without special gear would be crushed. Air pockets inside the body would collapse completely. Dropping to 1,000 meters takes you into the midnight zone. No sunlight has ever touched this water. The pressure here is 100 times greater than at the surface. If you exposed a styrofoam cup to this depth, it would shrink to the size of a thimble. The Titanic rests at nearly 4,000 meters down. The pressure there exceeds 380 atmospheres. That is nearly 6,000 pounds pushing against every square inch of surface. Imagine an elephant standing on your thumb. Now imagine that force everywhere. Building a machine to survive this requires perfect geometry. A sphere is the ideal shape. It distributes the crushing weight evenly across its entire surface. Any flaw or deviation from a perfect circle creates a weak point. The ocean will always find the weak point. Materials matter just as much as shape. Titanium is the standard choice. It flexes slightly under pressure and returns to its original shape when the pressure is removed. It is predictable and reliable. It bends before it breaks. Carbon fiber behaves entirely differently. It is composed of tiny threads bound in resin. It is incredibly strong against pulling forces, which is why we use it in airplanes. But under crushing compressive forces, it can snap without warning. When a rigid hull fails at extreme depth, the result is an implosion. People often confuse this with an explosion. They are exact opposites. An explosion throws matter outward. An implosion is a violent collapse inward. The energy stored in that pressure difference is staggering. When the hull breaches, the ocean rushes in to fill the empty space. It moves at supersonic speeds. The air inside the cabin is compressed so rapidly that it actually ignites. This creates a momentary flash of heat that rivals the surface of the sun. But the fire is instantly extinguished by the very water that created it. All of this happens in the span of milliseconds. It is a violent physical reset. There is no malice in this action. The deep does not attack you. It simply removes the argument for your shape. You brought a pocket of low pressure into a high pressure environment. The ocean simply corrects the anomaly. Understanding this reframes every deep sea tragedy. It was never a fight. It was a failure of engineering against an absolute law of physics. The ocean is not an adversary you can outsmart. It is a boundary condition you must respect. We are terrestrial beings obsessed with conquering nature. We climb mountains because they are there. We dive into the abyss for the exact same reason. But the mountain allows you to freeze slowly. The abyss offers no such grace. At full ocean depth, the pressure approaches 1,000 atmospheres. This is found in the deep trenches. The water is so heavy it actually becomes slightly denser. Only highly specialized creatures can survive here, their bodies completely fluid-filled. A fish living at these depths has no air bladders. If you bring them to the surface, they expand and fall apart. They need the crushing weight to hold themselves together. To them, the surface is a deadly vacuum. We are the exact opposite. We need the thin air of the surface to hold our bodies together. Going down there requires carrying our fragile environment with us. We are aliens invading a completely hostile world in fragile tin cans. Every rivet and seal is tested continuously during a dive. A tiny leak at 4,000 meters does not drip. It cuts through steel like a laser beam. The water pressure transforms a simple liquid into a devastating weapon. This creates a persistent visceral vertigo. When you look out the viewport of a submersible, you're looking at instant death separated by a few inches of acrylic. The view is beautiful, but the context is terrifying. You cannot feel the weight, but you know it is there. It presses against the glass, waiting for a single molecular flaw. It is a quiet stalker that never sleeps and never tires. It just waits for you to make a mistake. Engineers spend their entire careers trying to calculate exactly how much weight a material can hold before it shatters. They use enormous safety factors. If a hull needs to survive 4,000 meters, they design it to survive 8,000. But calculations on paper are different from reality in the dark. The ocean is the ultimate testing ground. It is not grade on a curve. You either survive the pressure or you become part of the water column. In January 1962, men climbed into a homemade steel sphere. They were attempting to reach the deepest place on the planet, a place no light has ever reached. They would hear their outer window crack on the way down. Auguste Piccard was a Swiss physicist who designed the bathyscaphe. He had already broken records in balloons reaching the stratosphere. He simply inverted the concept. Instead of a balloon filled with lighter-than-air gas, he used a massive float filled with gasoline. Gasoline is lighter than water and resists compression. This massive float would carry a tiny, heavy steel cabin beneath it. It was a crude but incredibly effective piece of engineering. The United States Navy bought the vessel and named it Trieste. Jacques Piccard, son of the inventor, and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh were chosen for the dive. Their target was the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench. It is a scar in the earth nearly 11,000 meters deep. It is the absolute bottom. The morning of January 23rd was rough. Huge swells battered the Trieste on the surface. Getting into the sphere was a dangerous physical challenge. Once inside, they sealed the heavy steel door. They were completely cut off from the world. They began to sink. The descent was painstakingly slow. They dropped through the twilight zone in a matter of hours. The water outside grew colder, sucking the heat right through the steel walls of the cabin. They wore heavy sweaters to stop shivering. There was very little to do but watch the depth gauge. The numbers climbed steadily. 3,000 meters, 6,000 meters. They were passing into a realm that was entirely unknown, a place beyond maps and beyond rescue. At 9,000 meters, a sharp cracking sound violently shook the cabin. It sounded like an explosion. Both men froze. In a sphere at that depth, any failure is instantly fatal. They waited for the water to rush in. Nothing happened. They checked their instruments. Everything seemed stable. They finally traced the noise to a plexiglass window port in the entry tube. The outer pane had cracked under the immense pressure. It was not the main pressure hull, but it was a terrifying warning. They had a choice to make: drop ballast and immediately return to the surface, or keep going down. The structural integrity of the main cabin was still sound. They looked at each other and made the decision. They kept going. I began to tighten into unease. The sheer weight pressing on their tiny metal bead was nearly unimaginable. Over 1,000 atmospheres of pressure surrounded them. The window crack was a reminder that the ocean was actively trying to crush them. Finally, after nearly 5 hours of sinking, the bottom appeared in their searchlights. It was a flat expanse of yellowish silt. They touched down softly. A massive cloud of sediment billowed up, entirely enveloping the viewport. They could barely see a thing. They spent exactly 20 minutes at the bottom of the world. Through the murky water, they claimed to see a flatfish. This observation would later be hotly debated by biologists. But in that moment, it meant life existed even in the ultimate depths. They ate chocolate bars to stay warm and took a few photographs. The cracked window in the access tube meant their journey back up would be dangerous. If that window failed completely during ascent, they might be trapped inside the sphere once they reached the surface. They dropped massive amounts of iron shot ballast. The Trieste slowly lifted off the seafloor. The journey back to the surface took another 3 hours. The cold remained intense until they finally breached the warm surface layers. Breaking the surface was a victory that went mostly unnoticed by the general public. There were no massive parades. There was no live television coverage. They had performed a miracle of engineering, but the world was largely looking somewhere else. Their vessel was clumsy and difficult to operate. It was basically a giant underwater elevator with no horizontal mobility. It proved that humans could reach the bottom, but it also proved how horribly difficult and expensive it was to do so. Picard and Walsh had taken the first step into the deep unknown. They expected a fleet of advanced submarines to follow in their wake. They believed they were opening an entirely new frontier for human exploration. They were wrong. The Trieste would do a few more dives and eventually be retired. It sits in a museum today, a relic of a brief moment when we cared about the abyss. The steel bead that held 2 men against the crushing void remains entirely unique. When you look at that thick steel hull today, you have to respect their courage. They trusted raw physics over modern computer modeling. They rode a gasoline balloon into total darkness on a bet that the math was right. It remains one of the purest exploration achievements in human history. No teters, no digital rescue weekends. Just 2 men dropping stones to go down and dropping more stones to go up. It was beautiful in its absolute simplicity. The cracked window held all the way to the surface. They emerged into the bright Pacific sun as the only 2 humans to have visited the Hadal Zone. They had beaten the pressure. Their names should be as famous as Armstrong and Aldrin. But the deep ocean does not photograph well. There are no Earthrise pictures to inspire a nation. There's only silt and darkness and cold. They proved we could survive the deepest trench. We had the technology. We had the materials. We even had the nerve. But we did not have the attention span. After 1960, the deepest place on Earth would not see another human being for more than half a century. Not because it couldn't be reached again. We had already proven we could do it. We stopped because almost nobody tried. The Cold War shifted our collective gaze upward. The Soviet Union launched a satellite. The United States panicked and formed a space agency. Suddenly, the money and attention that could have built deep ocean vessels poured entirely into rockets. The moon became the ultimate prize. The ocean was relegated to a tactical hiding spot for nuclear missiles. Exploring the Hadal Zone offered no strategic military advantage. There were no flags to plant that anyone could actually see. We chose a direction to look, and it was up, not down. Over the next few decades, dozens of people would travel to space. 12 men would walk on the lunar surface. We sent rovers to Mars. The Challenger Deep remained empty. The bottom of the ocean was left completely to unmanned probes. Machines like the Japanese Keiko mapping the dark in 1995. They did excellent science, but a robot does not feel awe. A robot cannot explain the visceral terror of the deep. 52 years passed. Entire generations lived and died without a single human venturing back to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. It is a quiet outrage. We had mapped the surface of other planets better than our own seafloor. The silence was finally broken by a filmmaker. James Cameron decided that half a century was long enough to wait. He did not wait for a government space agency to fund him. He built his own machine as a personal project. The Deep-Sea Challenger was a radical new design. Instead of a horizontal sphere, it was a vertical descent vehicle. It was designed to drop through the water column like a spear. It was bright green and incredibly narrow. Inside, Cameron was packed into a tiny steel sphere with his knees pulled up to his chest. There was barely enough room to move his arms. He would make the dive entirely alone. There was no co-pilot to help if things went wrong. On March 26, 2012, he dropped into the Pacific. The descent took over 2 hours. The technology had vastly improved since the Trieste. He had high-definition cameras and powerful LED lights to push back the total darkness. He reached the bottom and spent hours exploring. He collected samples and filmed the desolate landscape. The footage he brought back was stunning. It showed a barren alien world right here on our own planet. It was both beautiful and incredibly lonely. Cameron proved that a single, dedicated individual could achieve what superpowers had abandoned, but it also highlighted an uncomfortable truth. Why was this left to a movie director? Where were the national scientific institutions? Why did we abandon the deep? The answer is entirely about optics. Space is vast and bright. It inspires hope and limitless potential. The deep ocean is crushing, cold, and claustrophobic. It reminds us of our own mortality. We prefer looking at the stars. 52 years between man dives to the deepest point is a failure of curiosity. We let the abyss fade into a terrifying myth. We convinced ourselves there was nothing down there worth seeing. We were entirely wrong. The deep ocean is the largest habitat on Earth. It regulates our climate and holds secrets to early life. Yet we treat it like an empty void, a place to drop things we want to forget. Cameron eventually donated his submersible to science. It sits in a research facility now. The brief spark of public interest faded almost as quickly as it arrived. We went right back to looking up. We are terrified of the dark. The ocean floor forces us to confront an environment that actively rejects human life. Space is a vacuum, but you can build a window to look out. The ocean wants to smash the window entirely. It took half a century to get one photograph of a man at the bottom of the world. In that same time frame, we place telescopes in orbit that can see the birth of galaxies. The disparity in our effort is staggering. The true tragedy is not just that we stopped exploring. It is that we forgot the deep ocean even existed. We reduced the largest physical space on our planet to a blank spot on the map. We turned our backs on the abyss. There are deep trenches all over the world that have never seen a human being. The Challenger Deep is just the deepest. There are thousands of miles of absolute darkness completely untouched by our lights. They remain totally unknown. The few people who have gone down there all report the same feeling. It is a profound isolation. You are entirely severed from the surface world. You are a temporary visitor in a permanent and unforgiving kingdom. Perhaps that is why we avoid it. It is humbling. The deep ocean does not stroke our ego. It reminds us that we are fragile mammals living on a thin crust of rock. The water owns this planet. Cameron returned to the surface and the world cheered briefly. Then the news cycle moved on. The deepest trench went back to being dark and silent. It does not care if we visit or if we stay away. The pressure remains. The cold remains. The dark remains. We can conquer the distance, but we can never conquer the environment. The bottom of the ocean is perfectly content to wait another 52 years for our next attempt. The message from the depths sounded almost bureaucratic. Minor difficulty. Have positive up angle. Attempting to blow. Those were the last coherent words from the United States ship Thresher on April 10, 1963. The nuclear submarine was conducting deep-dive sea trials off the coast of Cape Cod. Then the ocean simply swallowed it whole. It left behind 129 men without leaving a single body to bury. The Thresher was supposed to be the pride of the fleet. It was a technological marvel designed to hunt Soviet submarines. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about what happens when you trust your machinery a little too much. The sea is unforgiving. Deep water pressure does not negotiate. When a pipe joint failed deep in the engine room, seawater sprayed inward with the force of cannon. That spray likely hit a sensitive electrical panel. The nuclear reactor scrammed to protect itself, shutting down the main power. Suddenly, the submarine was heavy, blind, and falling in the absolute dark. The crew would have tried everything. They tried to blow the ballast tanks to achieve positive buoyancy, but the moisture in the high-pressure air system froze solid as it expanded. Ice clogged the valves. The submarine continued to sink toward crushed depth. Down in the control room, the air would have been thick with panic and condensation. Surface ships listened helplessly on the underwater telephone. They heard the sounds of a ship dying, tearing metal, the groan of bulkheads buckling under pressure that no human engineering could withstand. Then came a violent shockwave. After that, there was nothing but the silence of the Atlantic. The loss hit the military establishment like a physical blow. The Navy could not accept that their finest vessel was just gone. They scrambled deep-sea vehicles like the Bathyscaphe Trieste to find the wreckage. When they finally found it scattered across the sea floor, the images were sobering. Pieces of the hull were torn apart like tin foil. The ocean had completely disassembled their state-of-the-art warship. Grief slowly hardened into procedure. The top brass realized that arrogance had killed those men. They had built a machine so complex that a single faulty pipe joint could doom everyone on board. There were too many points of failure and not enough redundancy. The investigation revealed glaring flaws in quality control and inspection protocols across the shipyards. Admiral Hyman Rickover was furious. He demanded an entirely new approach to submarine safety. This tragedy birthed the SubSafe program. It was a rigorous quality assurance program designed to ensure that the hull would remain watertight and that a submarine could always recover from flooding. Every valve and pipe had to be certified with obsessive attention to detail. The culture shifted overnight. Before the disaster, corners were occasionally cut to meet deployment schedules. After the Thresher, nobody dared to bypass a safety check. The ocean had taught them fear. They wrote that fear into a massive checklist that governed every aspect of construction and maintenance. The bureaucratic weight was immense, but absolutely necessary. It is a profound legacy for a lost crew. Not one single submarine certified under the SubSafe program has ever been lost to a deep-water diving casualty since. The Navy turned a nightmare into a permanent doctrine of survival. They learned that the ocean does not care about your intentions or your technology. It only respects physics. The families of the crew were left with empty caskets and folded flags. They had no graves to visit, only coordinates on a map. The ocean is an absolute void when it comes to closure. You drop flowers into the waves and watch them drift away. The grief of those families is woven into the safety of every modern submariner. You have to wonder what those men thought in their final moments. Did they know it was over when the reactor scrammed? The darkness in that falling steel tube must have been absolute. The sound of the hull groaning louder and louder is something you cannot unhear once you imagine it. They died so that others would not have to. We look at submarines today and assume they're invincible. We forget the blood that paid for that confidence. The Thresher sits in pieces 2,500 meters down, slowly rusting away. It is a permanent monument to human hubris and the lethal reality of deep water pressure. The Atlantic Ocean holds its prizes tightly. The debris field stretches for miles. Mutilated battery plates, twisted sonar domes. It looks less like a shipwreck and more like an airplane crash on the seabed. The sheer violence required to shred thick steel like paper is hard to comprehend. That violence is the default state of the deep ocean. We are the fragile intruders there. Over the decades, the Navy has occasionally sent remotely operated vehicles down to check on the site. They monitor the area for any signs of radiation leakage. The reactor remains largely intact, a sleeping giant in the cold mud. The surrounding marine life ignores the wreckage completely. Crabs crawl over the remnants of human ambition without a second thought. The disaster changed how we view the deep sea. It was no longer just a theater for war games. It was an actively hostile environment that required profound respect. The space race was happening above, but a different kind of survival race was happening below. The pressure down there is alien. It is crushing and absolute. There is a memorial in Arlington National Cemetery for the crew. It is a quiet stone bearing 129 names. But the true memorial is the sound of a submarine blowing its ballast tanks successfully and breaking the surface. Every time a crew breathes fresh air after a dive, they owe a small debt to the Thresher. They say the sea is a harsh mistress. That is a cliché copyright because it is true. The Navy learned that you cannot negotiate with physics. You cannot bluff a faulty weld. You either build it right or you die. The SubSafe program is the manifestation of that brutal reality. It is a testament written in ink over blood. The men who inspect those welds today know the history. They feel the ghost of 1963 looking over their shoulders. A missed flaw on a radiograph could mean another boat vanishing into the dark. That kind of pressure makes you very meticulous. It transforms a routine job into a sacred duty. The standard is perfection. Even now, the details of the final moments are speculative. We know the mechanical sequence of events, but the human experience is locked away in the deep. The frantic attempts to restore power, the sudden realization that the dive planes were useless, is a claustrophobic nightmare that plays out only in the minds of those who study it. The Trieste bathyscaphe crew who found the wreck described a profound sense of awe. They were looking at the remains of their friends and colleagues. It was a cold and clinical environment down there, completely indifferent to human tragedy. The ocean simply absorbed the submarine and continued to be the ocean. It was a deeply humbling sight. You can still find old newsreels announcing the loss. The black and white footage shows somber anchors reading the devastating news. The entire nation stopped to mourn. It was a stark contrast to the triumphant parades of the era. The Cold War had claimed another massive toll. But this time the enemy was the sea itself. Safety regulations are almost always written after a catastrophe. The rules we follow blindly today were bought with the lives of people who found out the hard way. The Thresher is the ultimate example of this grim reality. The submarine force is safer because 129 men did not come home one Tuesday morning. The story of the Thresher is fundamentally about learning from a terrible mistake. It is about taking a catastrophic failure and forging it into a shield. The Navy lost a ship but gained a philosophy. They learned that the ocean will exploit any weakness. You have to be perfect because the deep sea does not forgive minor difficulties. For months, the Navy told 99 families that they were still searching for their sons and husbands. The wives held on to hope, while the top brass knew exactly where the wreckage was. They had privately located the United States ship Scorpion long before they admitted it to the public. The deception was careful and calculated. It was May of 1968 when the Scorpion vanished about 400 miles southwest of the Azores. The submarine was returning home from a Mediterranean deployment. Unlike the Thresher, this loss was shrouded in bizarre mysteries and conflicting theories. Was an internal battery explosion? Did a hot-running torpedo detonate in the tube? Or did the Soviet Navy finally take revenge for earlier provocations? Historians still argue over the exact cause today. The official inquiry was a masterclass in vague conclusions. The Navy wanted to protect its secrets at all costs. That included keeping the grieving families in the dark about the true fate of the vessel for a painfully long stretch. Finding a lost submarine in the middle of the Atlantic without an exact location is like finding a needle in a continent. But oceanographer John Craven had a different approach. He did not rely on traditional search patterns. Instead, he used an unconventional Bayesian search method. He gathered a group of experts and had them bet on different scenarios. Craven combined their informed guesses with acoustic data from hydrophone networks. He built a probability map of the seafloor. The Navy thought his methods were eccentric, maybe even crazy. But his math narrowed the search area down to a surprisingly small box. He essentially calculated the location of the wreck using the wisdom of the crowd and obscure physics. Within months, his team found the Scorpion. It was crushed and scattered on the bottom, 3,000 meters down. The bow section was heavily damaged. But instead of announcing the discovery, the Navy kept quiet. They continued to issue vague statements about an ongoing search effort. The families were left entirely in limbo, waiting for a miracle. The not knowing was a choice someone else made for them. Imagine waiting by the phone every day for a husband who is already resting on the abyssal plain. The cruelty of that silence is hard to justify. The Navy claimed they needed time to analyze the site and ensure no sensitive materials could be recovered by the Soviets. They finally confirmed the discovery in October. The announcement shattered the fragile hope the families had been clinging to. The betrayal simmered under their grief. They realized the government had been managing the narrative rather than telling the truth. The loss of a loved one is terrible, but being lied to about it adds a very specific kind of poison. The photographs of the wreck are haunting. The sail of the submarine lies detached from the main hull. The forward torpedo room is completely destroyed. Some investigators pointed to the damage as proof of an internal weapon explosion. Others looked at the battery compartment. The ocean floor is a terrible crime scene because the pressure alters all the evidence. We will probably never know exactly what doomed the Scorpion. The competing theories reflect the paranoia of the Cold War. Everything was a potential attack. Every accident was suspected sabotage. The submarine was operating in a highly tense environment, trailing Soviet vessels. The idea that a simple mechanical failure killed them was almost too mundane for some to accept. Craven always maintained that a torpedo malfunction was the most likely culprit. He believed a weapon became active inside the tube, and the crew tried to turn the submarine rapidly to disarm it. That desperate maneuver failed. The resulting explosion breached the hull and sent the boat plunging past crushed depth. It is a terrifying scenario to picture. Other experts strongly disagree. They point to known issues with the battery systems on that class of submarine. A hydrogen gas explosion could have incapacitated the crew and led to flooding. The debate is endless because the ocean refuses to yield clear answers. The wreckage is too mangled to offer a definitive conclusion. It keeps its secrets well. The tragedy highlighted a dark truth about the military apparatus. The mission always comes before the individual, and secrecy often comes before the truth. The families of the Scorpion crew became collateral damage in an information war. They were treated as a public relations problem to be managed rather than people who deserved honest answers. You could see the anger in the interviews with the widows years later. Time did not heal the wound of that deception. They felt abandoned by the institution their husbands had died serving. The Navy eventually released more information, but the trust was permanently broken. A government that will lie about a grave will lie about anything. Today, the Scorpion rests in eternal darkness. The ocean currents slowly bury the debris in fine silt. It is a lonely grave far from any coast. The intense pressure and near-freezing temperatures preserve the metal in a slow state of decay. It will be there long after the Cold War is completely forgotten by history. The Bayesian search method that found the sub revolutionized deep-sea exploration. Craven proved that mathematics and probability could conquer the sheer scale of the ocean. His techniques have been used since to find missing aircraft and lost nuclear weapons. The irony is that his brilliant success was immediately buried in a classified file drawer. We often romanticize the submarine service. We call it the silent service. But that silence has a heavy cost. It means the men who serve operate outside the awareness of the public. When things go wrong, they die in the dark. And sometimes their own government prefers to keep them in the dark even after they are gone. The wreck site is occasionally monitored for radiation, just like the Thresher. The nuclear reactor and the 2 torpedoes with nuclear warheads are still down there. They are considered safe, entombed in the deep ocean mud. The environmental impact is deemed negligible. The ocean is vast enough to swallow our most dangerous creations without a burp. But the psychological impact remains profound. The story of the Scorpion is a ghost story without a proper ending. There is no clear villain and no satisfying resolution. Just a crushed hull and 99 empty chairs at dinner tables back home. It is a reminder that the deep sea is a place of permanent ambiguity. The deep ocean is the ultimate vault. Once something sinks past a certain depth, it belongs to the abyss. Getting it back is almost impossible. Finding it is a miracle. Understanding what happened to it is a guessing game played with blurred photos and acoustic echoes. The truth is often whatever theory has the best math. You look at the deep sea footage of the wreckage, and it looks like an alien landscape. The twisted steel is covered in marine snow. Ghostly white fish swim through the empty hatches. They do not care about geopolitics or naval tragedies. To them, the ruined submarine is just another rock on the vast muddy plain. The silence of the Navy was eventually broken by investigative journalists and persistent family members. They forced the government to declassify documents and admit what they knew. It was a slow and painful process of extracting the truth from an unwilling bureaucracy. The families had to fight for the right to know how their loved ones died. The legacy of the Scorpion is a complex mix of sorrow and suspicion. It forced a reckoning about transparency and the human cost of military secrecy. The Bayesian search model is a triumph of human intellect. The subsequent cover-up is a failure of human empathy. Both things happened simultaneously in the spring of 1968. The ocean hides a lot of things, but human nature is much harder to conceal. The Navy thought they could manage the narrative. They forgot that grief demands the truth. The Scorpion remains a stark lesson in the limits of control. The deep sea is a very quiet place, but eventually, all the secrets wash ashore. The Central Intelligence Agency built the most expensive make-believe mining vessel in history to steal a sunken Soviet submarine right off the seafloor. And they did it in plain sight. It sounds like the plot of a terrible spy novel. But in the early 1970s, the American government actually pulled it off. It started in 1968 when the Soviet submarine K-129 sank in the Pacific Ocean. The Soviets searched frantically but could not find it. American hydrophones had picked up the implosion. The United States knew exactly where it was. It lay roughly 5,000 meters down, deeper than anyone had ever attempted a salvage operation. The intelligence value of the submarine was staggering. It held nuclear missiles, cryptographic machines, and codebooks. The CIA wanted it desperately. But how do you hoist a 2,000-ton submarine from the abyssal plain without the Soviets noticing? You need a massive ship and a very good cover story. Enter eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes. The agency approached Hughes to front the operation. They called it Project Azorian. They built a massive ship called the Glomar Explorer. The official story was that Hughes was building a revolutionary vessel to mine manganese nodules from the deep ocean floor. The media bought it completely. It was the perfect disguise for a heist. The ship was an engineering marvel. It had a massive claw designed to descend 3 miles down on a string of heavy pipes. The claw would grab the submarine and pull it up into a hidden moon pool inside the ship. The doors would close beneath it. The entire recovery would happen out of sight from Soviet spy ships. It was incredibly dangerous. The pipe string weighed millions of pounds. If it snapped, it would tear the ship apart. The target was a fragile, ruined hull, and they had to do all of this while Soviet intelligence vessels circled them, completely unaware that their lost submarine was being stolen directly under their noses. In the summer of 1974, they lowered the claw. It took days to reach the bottom. The operators guided it using primitive sonar and cameras. When the claw finally closed around the K-129, the tension was unbearable. They began the agonizingly slow process of pulling the massive weight up through the water column. They got halfway up when disaster struck. Several of the grabber pins on the claw failed. The metal groaned and snapped. A large portion of the submarine broke away and plummeted back into the dark. It shattered on impact with the seafloor. The CIA only managed to recover the forward section of the sub. It was a partial success, but a monumental achievement nonetheless. Inside the recovered section, they found the bodies of 6 Soviet submariners. The Americans gave them a formal burial at sea. They filmed the ceremony, complete with the Soviet national anthem playing. It was a bizarre moment of respect in the middle of a massive espionage operation. The footage of that burial is surreal. American intelligence officers honoring the very enemies they were stealing from. It shows the strange intimacy of the Cold War. The ocean was a shared graveyard. Down there, ideologies mattered less than the crushing weight of the water. They boxed up the recovered intelligence and headed home. For a year, the secret held. The fake mining story was still entirely believable. But in 1975, a break-in at a Howard Hughes office led to stolen documents. The story leaked to the press. The Los Angeles Times was preparing to publish the truth about the Glomar Explorer and Project Azorian. The CIA panicked. They tried to kill the story, but the journalists would not back down. The agency needed a way to refuse comment without confirming or denying the operation. They crafted a highly specific legal phrase. It became known as the Glomar response. We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of the information requested. That phrase changed the landscape of government secrecy forever. It is still used today to bat away freedom of information requests. The ocean floor kept a secret so well that a government had to invent a new kind of lie to protect it. The Glomar response is the bureaucratic equivalent of a smoke bomb. The Soviets were furious when they found out. They realized they had been completely outplayed. They had sailed right past the Glomar Explorer while it was pulling up their submarine. The audacity of the American operation was staggering. It proved that the deep ocean was not a safe hiding place if your enemy had enough money. The Glomar Explorer sat idle for years after the mission. It was a marvel of engineering without a purpose. Nobody actually wanted to mine manganese nodules. The cover story was dead. The ship was a massive, floating monument to paranoia and unlimited budgets. It was eventually sold and converted for deep water oil drilling. You look at the pictures of the claw, and it looks like a mechanical kraken. It was designed to reach down into the abyss and drag secrets to the surface. The ambition required to even conceive of such a machine is wild. It shows the lengths humanity will go to in the name of geopolitical advantage. We still do not know exactly what the CIA found in that forward section. The intelligence yield remains heavily classified. Some say they got the code books. Others say the crucial parts were in the section that fell back to the bottom. The true value of Project Azorian is locked in a vault somewhere in Langley. But the cultural impact is undeniable. It cemented the idea of the deep sea as a theater for clandestine operations. It is a place where giant claws drop from the sky and steal submarines. It blurs the line between reality and cinematic fiction. The truth really was stranger than anything Hollywood could invent. The ocean floor is littered with the detritus of these secret wars. Hydrophones, lost weapons, shattered submarines. It is an archaeological site of human paranoia. The K-129 is still down there, broken into even more pieces now. It is a quiet reminder of the stakes that were played out in the cold, black water. The irony is that Howard Hughes was the perfect frontman because he was already known for doing inexplicable things with his money. A giant mining ship fit his persona perfectly. The public just accepted it. It is a lesson in how a good narrative can hide the most outrageous truths right out in the open. The burial of the Soviet sailors is the emotional anchor of the whole crazy story. It brings the high-stakes espionage down to a very human level. Those men died terrible deaths in the dark. Their recovery and subsequent burial was a brief moment of dignity amidst the theft. The sea claims everyone equally. The engineering data from the mission advanced deep-sea technology by decades. The heavy lift systems developed for the Glomar Explorer paved the way for modern offshore oil operations. The mission was born of conflict, but it accidentally pushed human capability forward. The ocean always extracts a price, but sometimes it yields progress. We look at the ocean surface and see a flat expanse of blue. We forget the complex, three-dimensional chess game being played underneath it. Project Azorian was the boldest move ever made on that board. It was a heist that required defying the fundamental laws of deep water pressure and international relations simultaneously. The Glomar response remains the most enduring legacy of the operation. It is a linguistic shield forged from deep-sea espionage. Every time a government official uses that phrase today, they are echoing the ghost of a fake mining ship. They are invoking the secrecy of a place where light never reaches. The United States wired the ocean floor with a massive network of secret ears. They built it to track Soviet submarines moving through the dark. It was called the Sound Surveillance System, or SOSUS. For decades, it was one of the most closely guarded secrets of the Cold War. The ocean was not empty. It was listening. The hydrophone arrays were laid across strategic choke points. The Greenland-Iceland United Kingdom gap was heavily monitored. The arrays sat deep in the sound channel, a layer of water where acoustics travel for thousands of miles. Operators sitting in windowless rooms analyzed the faint acoustic signatures of propellers and engines. They could hear everything. The system was incredibly effective. It stripped away the primary advantage of the submarine. It ruined their stealth. But as the Cold War ended, the military slowly lost interest. They started handing access over to civilian scientists at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The scientists wanted to listen to whales and undersea earthquakes. The military essentially handed NOAA the keys to the greatest underwater microphone ever built. Suddenly, researchers could hear the ocean breathing. They tracked blue whales migrating across ocean basins. They heard the groans of tectonic plates grinding together. The tools of war were repurposed for pure discovery. It was a beautiful transition of technology. Then, in the summer of 1997, the network picked up a sound nobody could explain. It was extraordinarily loud. It was ultra-low frequency. It lasted for about a minute, rising in pitch like a massive bubble bursting. The acoustic signature was captured by multiple sensors spread over 3,000 miles apart. The scientists nicknamed it the bloop. The sheer volume of the noise was baffling. If it was a biological sound, it would have to come from an animal much larger than a blue whale. The largest animal ever known to exist on Earth would not be loud enough to produce it. The mystery was profound. Speculation ran wild. Was it an undiscovered sea monster lurking in the deep Pacific? A giant squid of unprecedented proportions. Conspiracy theorists pointed out that the coordinates of the sound were relatively close to the fictional sunken city of Relaya from H.P. Lovecraft stories. The public imagination went into overdrive. The bloop became a legend. The ocean is vast and largely unexplored, which makes it the perfect canvas for our darkest fantasies. We want there to be monsters down there. It validates our primal fear of the deep water. The idea that something massive was screaming into the abyss resonated deeply with people. It was thrilling and terrifying. For years, the scientists analyzed the spectrograms. They compared the bloop to known biological sounds and mechanical noises. Nothing matched. The sound profile was unique. The unease began to curdle into intense curiosity. We built the ears to listen for enemy warships, and the ocean had answered with something completely alien to our understanding. The mystery fed a cultural obsession with the deep sea. It inspired documentaries, books, and endless internet forums. People debated the existence of prehistoric megalodons surviving in the Mariana Trench. The bloop was the ultimate piece of audio evidence that the ocean was hiding massive, living secrets from us. But science requires patience. In 2005, NOAA finally announced a conclusion. The bloop was not a giant monster. It was an icequake. It was the sound of massive iceberg cracking and calving off an Antarctic glacier. The tremendous energy released by the fracturing ice matched the acoustic profile perfectly. Some people were disappointed. An icequake is not as exciting as a giant sea creature. But the reality is actually far more awe-inspiring. The sound was the Earth itself fracturing on a monumental scale. It was a reminder of the sheer physical power of the natural world. The planet is loud. The detection of the bloop perfectly closes the arc of the Cold War ocean. We stopped listening for the enemy and started listening to the planet. The paranoia faded, replaced by scientific wonder. The ocean is no longer just a battlefield. It is a dynamic, noisy environment full of geological violence and biological richness. The SOSUS arrays are still functioning today, though many have been deactivated. They represent a monumental engineering achievement. Laying thousands of miles of cable across the abyssal plain was a Herculean task. The fact that the cables survived the crushing pressure and corrosive seawater for decades is a testament to their design. The scientists listening to the hydrophones today hear a changing ocean. They hear the increase in commercial shipping noise. They hear the changing migration patterns of marine mammals due to warming waters. The network has become a vital pulse monitor for the health of the global marine ecosystem. It is an invaluable scientific resource. You look at the spectrogram of the bloop, and it looks like a mountain range on paper. The visual representation of the sound shows the immense energy involved. It is a jagged peak rising out of the background noise of the sea. It is a signature of destruction happening thousands of miles away. The story of the bloop reminds us that the ocean is full of phenomena we do not fully understand. We are quick to project our own myths onto the unknown. When we hear a strange noise in the dark, we assume it is a monster. But the truth is usually a physical process of immense scale. The shift from military surveillance to environmental monitoring is a rare example of swords being beaten into plowshares. The technology designed to hunt the tools of human destruction is now used to protect the natural world. It is a hopeful narrative in an otherwise grim history of ocean exploitation and conflict. The deep sea remains a place of profound mystery. We have mapped the surface of Mars better than we have mapped the bottom of the ocean. Every time we drop a camera or a microphone into the abyss, we find something new. The bloop was just one loud reminder of how little we know. The ocean is a symphony of weird noises. Snapping shrimp, groaning ice, singing whales. The acoustic environment is rich and complex. Sound is the primary sense for many deep-sea creatures. In a world without light, hearing is everything. The ocean is not silent. It is a cacophony of life and geology. The legacy of Sosis is the revelation of that noisy world. The military accidentally gave us the ears to hear the planet. The hydrophone network is a technological marvel that outlived its original purpose. It is a sprawling web of cables resting in the cold mud, quietly listening to the heartbeat of the sea. We are still listening today. New autonomous gliders and buoy networks are expanding our acoustic reach. We are gathering massive amounts of data about the deep ocean environment. The bloop may have been explained, but there are always new mysteries waiting in the audio files. The ocean never stops talking to us. The transition from the paranoia of the Cold War to the curiosity of modern science changes how we see the abyss. It is no longer a void to hide in. It is a frontier to explore. The deep sea is demanding our attention, not just our fear. We are finally starting to understand its language. But as we map the sounds of the deep, we realize that the biggest surprises are not acoustic. The ocean floor hides ecosystems that defy everything we thought we knew about life on Earth. The darkness is not a dead zone. Down there, something incredible is waiting to break all the rules. In February 1977, a team of scientists found an entire ecosystem thriving in total darkness. They were aboard the research vessel Nor, drifting above the Galapagos Rift. They expected to find cold, dead mud and maybe a few wandering scavengers. Instead, they found a biological impossibility. Biology had a rule. Every living thing on the planet supposedly depended on the sun. Plants ate sunlight, animals ate plants, and other animals ate those animals. Down here, the sun had not touched the water for millions of years. The crew used a submersible named Alvin to drop into the black water. They sank for hours through layers of ocean where light simply ceased to exist. The pressure outside the titanium sphere could crush a car like an empty soda can. The water temperature should have been hovering just above freezing, but their sensors started registering wild spikes in heat. Something below them was violently warming the water. The scientists assumed their instruments were malfunctioning. They kept descending into the darkness. Then the floodlights cut through the gloom. Plumes of black smoke were billowing straight out of the seafloor. They looked like underwater chimneys belching thick soot into the ocean. The scientists had discovered hydrothermal vents. Scalding mineral-rich water was erupting from cracks in the crust of the Earth. The temperature inside those vents was hot enough to melt lead. But it was not the geology that shocked them into silence. It was the absolute chaos of life surrounding the chimneys. Dense colonies of giant tube worms swayed in the current. Some of them were 8 feet long with bright red plumes that looked like blood-dipped feathers. Clams the size of dinner plates lay scattered across the rocks. Pale blind crabs crawled over mounds of yellow mussels. The ecosystem was practically overflowing with movement. Nothing down here had ever seen the sun, yet the sheer density of life rivaled a tropical coral reef. The crew had no idea what they were looking at. The situation bordered on the comic because nobody expected to find anything alive. The Nor was heavily equipped for geology and water chemistry. The scientists had packed specialized thermometers and deep-sea rock drills. They had not bothered to bring proper biological preservatives. Why would they? The bottom of the ocean was supposed to be a desert. Now they were staring at a lush biological metropolis. They ended up using vodka from the ship's stores to preserve the specimens they brought to the surface. Back on the surface, the Discovery sent a quiet shock through the scientific world. These animals were not scavenging dead matter falling from above. They were eating something else entirely. The secret was invisible to the naked eye. The scalding water blasting out of the vents was loaded with hydrogen sulfide. To a surface animal, hydrogen sulfide is highly toxic. It smells like rotting eggs and shuts down cellular respiration. But down in the dark, something had learned to love it. Thick mats of bacteria covered every inch of rock near the vents. These microbes were taking the toxic hydrogen sulfide and converting it directly into energy. They did not need sunlight to make food. They were pulling energy out of the raw chemistry of the earth itself. The process was called chemosynthesis. It was a complete appending of the assumption that all life on our planet ultimately depends on a star burning in the sky. The rules had fundamentally changed. The giant tube worms had taken this trick to an extreme. They had no mouths and no digestive tracts. They did not eat in any conventional sense. Instead, their bodies were packed tight with specialized chemosynthetic bacteria. The worm acted as a living greenhouse. Its red plume collected oxygen and hydrogen sulfide from the water and delivered it to the bacteria inside. The bacteria made food, and the worm absorbed the food. They were existing in perfect mutual reliance. The clams and mussels employed a similar strategy. They opened their thick shells to filter the chemical-rich water, letting the microbes inside their tissues do the heavy lifting. The water around them was toxic, hot, and pitch black, yet they thrived in numbers that defied logic. This was not a fragile ecosystem clinging to the edge of survival. This was a biological engine running at full capacity. The darkest place on the planet was inventing its own reasons to be alive. The implications began to spread far beyond the Galapagos Rift. If life could flourish here, it meant biology was far more stubborn than we had ever given it credit for. The sun was optional. Earth was powering its own ecosystems from the inside out. Scientists had to rewrite entire textbooks. The Discovery proved that our understanding of life was inherently biased by our own experience on the sunny surface. We had looked at the abyss and projected our own limits onto it. Every time Alvin went back down, they found new variations on the theme. Some vents spewed clear fluids while others blasted thick black clouds. Each chimney system hosted its own bizarre community of specialists. There were pale octopuses creeping over the rocks and strange eel pouts swimming through the shimmering heat gradients. They were all locked into this narrow oasis. A few yards away from the vents, the temperature plummeted back to near freezing and the barren mud resumed. The vents themselves were temporary phenomena. They formed when cold seawater seeped into cracks in the ocean floor, got superheated by magma, and blasted back out. The dissolved minerals precipitated into solid rock upon hitting the cold, deep water, building the chimneys inch by inch. Some grew dozens of feet tall before collapsing under their own weight. Others simply clogged up from the inside and died. When a vent stopped flowing, the entire ecosystem around it collapsed into a ghost town. But biology had a solution for that too. The larvae of these animals were designed for long, desperate journeys in the dark. When a vent died, the microscopic offspring drifted in the frigid currents for hundreds of miles. They waited in suspended animation until they detected the faint chemical signature of a new active vent. They would settle down on the fresh rock and begin the cycle all over again. They were hopping from island to island in an endless night. This discovery fundamentally altered how we think about the cosmos. Astronomers suddenly looked at the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn with an entirely new perspective. If life did not need sunlight, then an ocean sealed beneath miles of solid ice was no longer a dead zone. Europa and Enceladus might have their own hydrothermal vents cracking open on the seafloor. The Galapagos Rift taught us that habitability is not about sunlight. It is about energy and chemistry. For the scientists who lived through it, the 1977 expedition felt like visiting another planet. They had plunged into the abyss expecting geology and instead found a thriving alien civilization. The sheer volume of biological mass stunned everyone who watched the footage. The tape reels showed a dense jungle of bizarre shapes moving in the artificial lights of the submersible. It was a complete shock to the system. It made the entire surface world feel somehow small and fragile. Consider the profound isolation of these creatures. While empires rose and fell above them, while ice ages came and went, they sat in the dark, eating rocks. They were completely disconnected from the seasonal rhythms of the surface. A meteor could strike the Earth and block out the sun for a decade, and the tube worms would never even notice. Their world was entirely self-contained, fueled by the slow, steady heartbeat of the Earth itself. The absolute silence of the deep ocean was broken only by the hiss of escaping fluids. The heat shimmered so violently it distorted the camera lenses. It was an environment that looked aggressively hostile to anything made of flesh. Yet here they were, soft-bodied animals living millimeters away from water hot enough to boil them alive. They had threaded an impossible needle, finding the exact gradient between freezing to death and being cooked. This was the true turning point in our relationship with the deep. It was the moment we stopped looking at the abyss as a place where things go to die. It was actually a place where things learn to live on terms we barely comprehend. The deep sea was not a void. It was a crowded theater with the lights turned off. And now that we had a flashlight, the shadows were starting to move. The chemical soup spewing from the vents contained heavy metals that would poison most surface life instantly. The microbes simply incorporated them into their metabolic pathways. They treated lethal toxins like premium fuel. The sheer adaptability of life was on full display, proving that given enough time, biology will find a way to eat almost anything. The Earth was bleeding heat and chemicals, and life had evolved a perfect sponge to soak it all up. As the news spread, biological oceanography experienced a gold rush. Every country with a submersible wanted to find their own vents. Expeditions fanned out across the mid-ocean ridges, mapping the jagged scars where tectonic plates pulled apart. Almost everywhere they looked, they found new chimneys and new species. The dark was teeming with strange specialists. Yeti crabs with hairy arms farming bacteria on their own claws. Scaly foot snails wearing literal iron armor forged from the vent fluids. The iron-armored snail is a perfect example of this bizarre logic. It takes iron sulfides from the hot water and incorporates them into its shell and foot, creating overlapping metallic plates. It looks like a medieval knight crawling across a rock. No other animal on Earth builds a skeleton out of iron. It was a completely novel solution to the problem of survival in a toxic environment. Evolution did not flinch. It just got creative. Before 1977, the textbooks stated clearly that life was a surface phenomenon. The deep ocean was an afterthought, a place of sparse scraps and slow decay. That single dive by Alvin burned the textbooks to ash. It proved that our planet is alive in ways we had not dared to imagine. It proved that the dark is not empty. The deep sea is not a wasteland at all. It is a parallel universe operating entirely by its own rules. The researchers on the Nor went home with bottles of strange worms and mussels preserved in Russian vodka. They had gone looking for cracks in the earth and found a crack in our understanding of biology. The awe they felt was profound and absolute. They had looked into the most forbidden environment on the planet and seen it staring back. The ocean floor was not just geologically active. It was aggressively and undeniably alive. This revelation shifted the center of gravity in biology downward. If the darkest, most hostile environment on Earth could produce such a staggering explosion of form and function, then what else was down there? The hydrothermal vents were just a single point on a map that remained almost entirely blank. The abyss was vast, cold, and immensely patient. The rule that life required the sun was dead. Now we had to figure out what rules applied in the dark. Some things down there are larger than physics has any right to allow. The ones that are not huge have solved problems no surface animal has ever had to face. The deep ocean is an engine of extreme adaptation. The pressure will crush you, the cold will freeze you, and the darkness will hide you forever. To survive in this environment, biology turns to solutions that look a lot like horror. Evolution did not flinch when it reached the abyss. It simply started improvising. The sheer scale of the abyss triggers a strange biological response called deep-sea gigantism. When temperatures drop and food becomes incredibly scarce, some species respond by growing to absurd proportions. A normal pill bug in your garden is the size of a fingernail. Its cousin in the deep ocean, the giant isopod, grows to the size of a cat. It scuttles across the mud on heavy armored legs, looking like a relic from a forgotten prehistoric war. It is perfectly adapted to fasting for years at a time. Then there is the giant squid. For centuries, it was dismissed as a myth, a monster drawn on the edges of maps by terrified sailors. But it is very real and aggressively large. Its eyes are the size of dinner plates, the largest of any living animal. They are built to detect the faintest glimmer of light in pitch-black water. Its tentacles are armed with serrated suckers designed to grip and tear. It thrives in a crushing void where sunlight has never existed. Finding a mate in an ocean the size of a planet is statistically impossible. The anglerfish solved this problem with a strategy so brutal it borders on the obscene. The females are bulky, terrifying predators with glowing lures dangling over jaws made of needle-sharp teeth. The males are tiny and pathetically weak. When a male finally finds a female in the dark, he bites her side and refuses to let go. This is not a romantic embrace. It is a permanent biological fusion. The male anglerfish begins to dissolve. His lips melt into her skin. Their bloodstreams connect and merge into one continuous flow. He loses his eyes, his fins, and most of his internal organs. He is slowly reduced to a parasitic pair of gonads hanging off her body. She provides the nutrients, and he provides the sperm whenever she is ready to spawn. She might carry a half-dozen dissolved males at a time. This is what survival looks like when loneliness is fatal. When the sun fails, life makes its own light. Roughly 3/4 of all deep-sea animals possess bioluminescence. The ocean is filled with glowing sparks, sudden flashes, and steady neon beams. It is a biological light show designed to hunt, hide, and communicate. Some predators use light to lure their prey into the dark. Others use it to blind their attackers and escape. The darkness is not actually dark at all. It is heavily armed and blinking. Consider the barrel-eye fish. It lives in the twilight zone where only a faint blue haze filters down from above. It has evolved a transparent skull. The top of its head is a clear dome filled with fluid. Inside the dome are two massive tubular eyes that can rotate to point straight up. It hovers motionless in the water, looking through its own forehead to spot the silhouettes of prey passing overhead. The moment it sees a shadow, it strikes. The gulper eel took a different approach to the problem of scarcity. Food is incredibly rare, so when you find a meal, you cannot afford to let it go, no matter how big it is. The gulper eel has a jaw that unhinges entirely. Its mouth is essentially a massive pelican pouch attached to a whip-thin tail. It can swallow prey significantly larger than its own body. Once the meal is inside, the eel's stomach expands like a balloon to accommodate the catch. The pressure in these depths is absolute. At sea level, a human experiences 14 pounds of pressure per square inch. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, The pressure is over 16,000 pounds per square inch. It is enough to shatter standard glass and compress solid wood to a fraction of its original size. Animals down here survive because they are mostly water, and water does not compress. Their cells are held together by specialized proteins that prevent them from collapsing under the weight of the ocean. The snailfish looks like a piece of pale jelly. It has no scales and very few hard bones. It lives deeper than almost any other known vertebrate. Its body is flooded with an organic chemical that acts like a pressure jacket for its proteins, keeping them functioning under extreme stress. Without this chemical, its cells would simply fold up and die. If you brought a snailfish to the surface, it would literally melt into a puddle. It requires the crushing weight of the abyss to hold its body together. The vampire squid lives its entire life in oxygen minimum zones where other animals would quickly suffocate. It is a relic, a living fossil that is neither a true squid nor an octopus. Its body is a deep velvety red. It has webbed arms lined with fleshy spines that look like sharp teeth. When threatened, it pulls its webbed arms entirely over its head like a dark cloak. The underside is covered in glowing photophores. It flips inside out, suddenly presenting a field of glowing eyes to confuse a predator. Some creatures have entirely abandoned the concept of eyes. In the absolute dark of the abyssal plane, sight is a wasted biological expense. The tripod fish stands on a muddy floor on 3 long, stiff fins, like a camera tripod. It faces into the gentle current and waits. It relies entirely on vibration to sense prey drifting by. It is practically blind, feeling its way through the dark with long, modified fins. It will stand in the same spot for days, a patient ghost hunting invisible shadows. Predation down here is a slow, calculated game. The viper fish has teeth so long they do not even fit inside its mouth. When it closes its jaws, the fangs curve up past its eyes. It hangs motionless in the water, flashing a bioluminescent lure at the end of a long dorsal spine. When a curious fish swims too close, the viper fish snaps its jaws shut. The oversized teeth act like a cage, trapping the meal securely. There is no escape once those bars close. Defenses are equally extreme. The deep-sea comb jelly is a fragile bell of translucent tissue that shatters rainbow light down its sides. When a predator bumps into it, the comb jelly instantly shuts off its bioluminescence. It goes totally dark and vanishes. Other species release blinding clouds of glowing slime. It is the deep-sea equivalent of a smoke bomb. The predator is left staring at a glowing cloud of mucus while the prey slips away into the void. The environment forces a brutal economy of movement. Every calorie burned could be your last if you do not find food for another 6 months. The animals down here drift, float, and wait. The Greenland shark roams the cold, deep waters for centuries. It moves so slowly it barely creates a wake. It has a metabolism that runs at an absolute crawl. It might take decades just to reach sexual maturity. Time moves differently in the cold dark. Everything is stretched out and suspended. The hagfish is a scavenger that thrives on the dead things that fall from the surface. It looks like a gray eel, but it has a skull with no jaw and no true spine. When threatened, it releases a microscopic amount of white powder from its pores. The powder hits the seawater and instantly expands into gallons of thick, suffocating slime. A shark that tries to bite a hagfish will find its gills suddenly packed with gelatinous goo. The shark has to spit the hagfish out just to breathe. This is a world defined by its extremes. It is not a gentle place. It is a pressure cooker that forces biology to strip away anything useless and exaggerate everything that works. The giant tube worms, the glowing lures, the transparent skulls. These are not freaks of nature. They are the highly polished results of millions of years of rigorous testing. The surface world is easy. The deep sea is where nature sends its hardest problems to be solved. If you look closely at the zombie worm, You see a masterclass in breaking the rules. It lives exclusively on the bones of dead whales that fall to the seafloor. It has no mouth and no stomach. It secretes acid to melt the whale bone, and then uses a network of roots to absorb the fat hidden inside the marrow. Like the anglerfish, the males are microscopic and live entirely inside the female body. The deep sea creates monsters, but it also creates absolute efficiency. We often project our own fears onto the abyss. We call these animals terrifying and grotesque, but that is because we're judging them by the soft standards of sunlit world. Down here, beauty is an irrelevant luxury. Survival is the only metric that matters. A male melting into a female is not a tragedy. It is a triumph of genetic continuation. A mouth larger than a body is not a nightmare. It is a guarantee against starvation. The adaptation continues all the way down into the very structure of the cells. The fluid inside the cells of deep-sea creatures is packed with specialized molecules called piezolites. These molecules act like microscopic struts, keeping the cellular machinery from being crushed by the immense pressure outside. It is biological architecture at the molecular level. Every single aspect of these animals has been engineered specifically for a place that desperately wants them dead. Even the color palette is specialized. Many animals in the twilight zone are bright red. At the surface, red is a loud warning color. But red light is the first wavelength to be filtered out by water. In the deep ocean, red light simply does not exist. An animal colored bright red appears completely black in the abyss. It is the perfect camouflage. They are painted in a color that their environment cannot even perceive. They are hiding in plain sight. The deeper you go, the stranger the solutions become. The xenophyophores are single-celled organisms that can grow to the size of a fist. A single giant cell sitting on the mud, sifting through the detritus. They absorb heavy metals and radioactive isotopes without any apparent harm. They leave strange, elaborate tracks in the sediment. They are completely alien to our understanding of how single cells should behave. The rules of scale simply break down in the deep. The biology of the abyss is a collection of impossible workarounds. It is a testament to the stubbornness of life. When confronted with pitch darkness, it builds flashlights. When confronted with crushing pressure, it dissolves its own bones. When confronted with infinite loneliness, it physically merges with its own kind. It never surrenders. It just changes shape and keeps going. The animals here are not just surviving the horror. They have weaponized it. This is what happens when life is given millions of years to iterate in the dark. The abyss is the ultimate laboratory for extreme biology. We are just beginning to catalog the results of these experiments. Every dive brings up something that challenges our basic assumptions of what flesh can do. The ocean floor is a haunted house designed by a genius. And the deeper we go, the weirder the architecture becomes. Something is alive right now beneath the seafloor that was already alive when a giant asteroid ended the age of the dinosaurs. It did not notice the impact. It did not notice the sky turning black or the oceans acidifying. It just sat in the absolute dark, doing almost nothing. Time is different down there. What we consider an eternity is barely a slow afternoon for the things buried in the deep mud. The ocean floor is covered in a thick blanket of sediment. This mud is made of dust blown off the continents and the tiny shells of dead plankton raining down from above. In some places, this layer of muck is miles thick. For decades, scientists assumed that anything buried deep in that mud was dead. It was entirely cut off from fresh nutrients. It was smothered by the crushing weight of the water and the earth above it. In 2020, a team of researchers decided to test that assumption. They took a drill ship out into the South Pacific Gyre. This is one of the most biologically dead patches of ocean on the planet. The surface water is starved of nutrients, meaning almost nothing falls to the bottom. The mud accumulates incredibly slowly. A single meter of sediment here might represent millions of years of accumulated dust. The team sent a drill pipe miles down to punch a core into the seafloor. They hauled up cylinders of clay from deep below the ocean floor. The deepest samples came from a layer that was roughly 100 million years old. When that mud originally settled on the bottom, Tyrannosaurus rex was still walking around on the surface. Pterosaurs were flying through the skies. The continents were in completely different positions. The researchers took this impossibly old mud back to a highly sterile laboratory to see what was inside. They expected to find fossilized chemical signatures of ancient life. Instead, they found intact microbial cells. The cells were sparse and totally dormant. They were not fossilized. They were simply waiting. The scientists carefully provided the microbes with tiny amounts of nitrogen and carbon. They did not expect much to happen. The organisms had been trapped in cold and noxic clay for 100 million years. They had zero fresh energy input during that entire span of deep time. Within weeks, the microbes woke up. They began to consume the nutrients. They started to multiply. The researchers were watching organisms come back to active life after a hiatus of 100 million years. They had survived by slowing their metabolism down to an almost undetectable crawl. They were operating on a timescale that makes human history look like a sudden flash of static. They were the ultimate survivors. This discovery opened a window into something called the deep subsea floor biosphere. The ocean floor is not the bottom of the living world. The biosphere extends hundreds of feet straight down into the solid earth. The mud is filled with ancient dormant microbes. Some estimates suggest that the sheer mass of microbes buried in the sea floor might equal the mass of all the fish in the oceans combined. It is a massive hidden ghost town of suspended animation. To understand how they survived, you have to discard everything you know about biology. A normal bacterium divides and reproduces every few hours. These deep sediment microbes might divide once every 1,000 years. They spend almost all their minimal energy just preparing their own DNA to keep it from degrading over the eons. They do not grow. They do not thrive. They merely endure. It is an existence poised directly on the mathematical edge of death. The implications of this are staggering. It means that the Earth has a massive biological backup system buried deep under the water. The surface of the planet has been repeatedly scoured by ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and asteroid impacts. But the deep subsea floor biosphere has remained largely undisturbed. It is a vault. It holds the oldest living things on the planet, quietly waiting out the apocalypse in total darkness. This brings us to a much larger and older mystery. Where did life actually begin? For a long time, scientists pictured a warm, shallow pond on the surface of the early Earth, struck by a lucky bolt of lightning. But the surface of the early Earth was a nightmare. It was constantly bombarded by heavy meteorites and blasted by lethal solar radiation. A warm pond was a terrible place to try and invent biology. It was too unstable. Many scientists now believe that life did not start on the surface at all. The leading hypothesis points directly to the deep ocean floor. Specifically, they look at the hydrothermal vents we saw in the previous chapter. The chemistry around those vents provides exactly the right conditions for life to spark. The vents offer a steady supply of heat, reactive chemicals, and physical rock structures that could act as the first primitive cell walls. Deep in those hot, rocky chimneys, the alkaline fluids mix with acidic seawater. This creates a natural electrical gradient. It is essentially a rocky battery. Before life knew how to make its own energy, it could have simply plugged into the power grid of the Earth itself. The raw ingredients for amino acids and proteins were bubbling out of the crust. The deep ocean was a safe, stable incubator, protected from the violent chaos of the surface. If this hypothesis is true, then the ocean floor is not just a strange biological frontier. It is our oldest nursery. It is the exact place where the raw geology of the planet finally woke up and started looking around. The microbes we pull out of the ancient mud might be the direct descendants of the very first biological experiments. They never left the neighborhood where they were born. This shifts our entire perspective on the deep sea. It is no longer just a cold, dark abyss holding weird monsters. It is a massive archive. The history of life on Earth is written into the mud and the rock of the seafloor. The microbes buried down there are the living ghosts of deep time. They remember a planet we cannot even imagine. They have survived everything the universe threw at them by simply refusing to die. We're only just beginning to crack open this vault. The technology required to drill miles into the ocean floor and retrieve uncontaminated samples is immensely complex. It requires ships capable of holding exact position over deep water while threading a needle of pipe into the crust. Every core they bring up forces us to rethink the limits of biology. We are finding microbes living inside the solid basalt rock beneath the mud. These rock-dwelling microbes eat the iron and sulfur in the basalt. They carve microscopic tunnels through the hard stone. They are practically part of the geology. It blurs the line between what is alive and what is just chemistry. If you can have a biology that runs at the speed of shifting tectonic plates, then the Earth itself starts to look a lot more like a living organism. The deep ocean is the beating heart of that system. The survival of the 100-million-year-old microbes raises a terrifying philosophical question. What does it mean to be alive if you're not doing anything? They were not growing, they were not changing, they were not interacting with their environment. They were trapped in a dark microscopic prison. Yet the spark was still there, preserved across geological eras. It is a stubbornness that borders on the divine. Life is a surprisingly hard fire to put out. We spend billions of dollars sending rovers to Mars to scrape the dry dust for chemical signs of ancient bacteria. We point telescopes at distant stars looking for planets with the right atmospheric signatures. But the most alien, resilient, and ancient life we know of is buried right here under our own oceans. We are sitting on top of an alien world. We just have to dig through the mud to find it. The deep subsea floor biosphere forces us to admit how little we actually control. We like to think of humans as the dominant force on the planet. We pave the land and fish the shallow seas. But the vast majority of the biological mass of this planet might be completely indifferent to our existence. The deep microbes do not care about climate change or nuclear war. They will outlast us all, just as they outlasted the dinosaurs. The scientists who woke those microbes up felt a profound sense of vertigo. They were holding a test tube containing organisms that predated the Atlantic Ocean. The continents had literally drifted thousands of miles while those cells slept in the clay. It makes human history feel incredibly small. The entire span of our civilization is barely a blip compared to the long, slow patience of the deep sea. This is why the deep ocean matters. It is not just a void holding weird fish. It is the operating system of the planet. It is the place where life likely began, and it is the place where life goes to hide when things go terribly wrong on the surface. The mud at the bottom of the ocean is the memory of the Earth, and we have barely begun to read the first few pages. Every time we drop a drill pipe or a submersible, we find something that breaks the rules. The abyss is constantly reminding us that our understanding of biology is shallow. The rule book was written in the sunlight, but the real heavy lifting happens in the dark. The deep ocean is a repository of biological extremes, holding onto the oldest secrets of the Earth with a grip of iron. The microbes from the age of dinosaurs are now growing in a lab, multiplying after their 100-million-year sleep. They are living proof that time is relative. The deep sea does not care about the ticking clock of the surface. It operates on deep time. It is a slow, quiet, incredibly powerful force that shaped the history of the planet and will continue to shape it long after we are gone. We are fundamentally connected to the abyss, even if we never see it. The origins of our own cells might trace back to a hot vent at the bottom of a dark sea. We carry the legacy of the deep ocean in our own biology. The abyss is not just an alien frontier. It is our distant past, perfectly preserved in the cold, dark mud, waiting patiently to be remembered. NASA has photographed the surface of a planet 140 million miles away in sharper detail than we have photographed the floor of the ocean beneath our own ships. We know exactly what the dust looks like on Mars. We have high-resolution topographical maps of Venus. Yet the bottom of our own ocean is mostly a void. We live on a planet we have barely bothered to look at. The scale of our ignorance is staggering. For most of human history, the deep ocean was simply a blank blue space on a map. We assumed the bottom was flat and featureless. We were completely wrong. The ocean floor holds the longest mountain range in the solar system and canyons deep enough to swallow Mount Everest whole. But if you look at a standard map of the world today, most of those features are just educated guesses. As of the Seabed 2030 project recent count, only around a quarter of the global seafloor has been mapped to modern resolution. That is actually a massive improvement. In 2017, that number was a mere 6%. We are slowly filling in the blanks, but it still means that roughly 75% of the ocean floor remains functionally unknown. We are sailing ships over dark mountains we do not even know exist. The reason for this massive gap is a simple matter of physics. You cannot use radar or satellites to map the deep ocean floor. Electromagnetic waves bounce off the surface of the water. To map the bottom, you have to use sound. You have to mount multi-beam sonar arrays on the hulls of ships and physically drive back and forth across the ocean, mowing the lawn. It is slow, incredibly expensive, and profoundly tedious work. The funding imbalance is heavily skewed toward the stars. Space agencies receive billions of dollars every year to point telescopes at dead rocks in the vacuum of space. Bathymetry teams, the people actually trying to map our own planet, scrape by on a fraction of that budget. There's a strange human bias at play. Looking up is seen as visionary and heroic. Looking down is seen as difficult, dirty, and largely irrelevant. For a long stretch of years, more human beings had walked on the dusty surface of the moon than had ever reached the deepest trench on their own planet. It was not until very recently that deep-sea submersibles started catching up. The Mariana Trench is the deepest scar on the Earth, yet we treated it like an afterthought. We sent 12 men to the lunar surface before we managed to send 3 to the bottom of the trench. This lack of attention has consequences. When a commercial airliner crashes into the open ocean, we suddenly realize how little we know. We scramble ships to search the sea floor, only to find that the maps we have are practically useless. We end up discovering massive, unknown underwater volcanoes and deep trenches simply because we are looking for lost wreckage. It takes a tragedy to force us to look closely at the abyss. The maps we do have often hide the truth. When you see a map of the ocean floor on Google Earth, it looks incredibly detailed. You see sharp ridges and deep valleys. But that detail is an illusion. Most of it is derived from satellite gravity measurements. The satellites measure slight dips and bumps in the surface of the ocean caused by the gravitational pull of massive underwater mountains. It is a rough estimate, not a true map. If you relied on those gravity maps to pilot a submarine, you would crash immediately. A mountain could be miles away from where the map says it is. Entire ecosystems, deep-sea coral reefs, and active hydrothermal vents can easily hide in the spaces between the data points. The map has a hole in it, and the hole covers most of the planet. We are operating largely blind. The Seabed 2030 project is trying to fix this. It is an international effort to map the entire ocean floor by the end of the decade. They are crowdsourcing data from research vessels, commercial shipping lines, and even private yachts. Every time a ship crosses the ocean with its sonar pinging, it adds another thin strip of high-resolution data to the global map. It is the largest mapping project in human history. But is a race against time. The deep ocean is changing even before we understand it. Deep-sea mining companies are already lining up to harvest rare earth metals from the seafloor. They want to send massive robotic bulldozers down to scrape up the mineral-rich nodules sitting on the abyssal plain. We are preparing to strip mine an ecosystem we have not even bothered to fully map yet. We are destroying the library before reading the books. Every time we do map a new section, we find something astonishing. We find brine pools, underwater lakes of heavy toxic salt water sitting on the bottom of the ocean. These pools have their own distinct shorelines and waves. We find deep-sea coral reefs that are thousands of years old, glowing pale white in the headlights of the submersibles. We find massive craters left behind by ancient methane explosions. The abyss is geographically complex and wildly diverse. It raises the question of what else is hiding in the dark. If we have only seen a quarter of the canvas, what massive geological features remain completely undiscovered? Are there active underwater volcanoes waiting to trigger massive tsunamis? Are there entirely new types of hydrothermal vents hosting completely unknown forms of life? The deep ocean is the ultimate repository of our planetary secrets, and we are treating it like an empty basement. The contrast between our knowledge of the surface and our ignorance of the deep is a profound failure of curiosity. We mapped the continents with painstaking precision. We sent satellites to map the ice caps and the deserts. We track global weather patterns in real time. Yet the system that actually regulates our climate, the immense volume of the deep ocean, remains a black box. We are driving a very complex machine without reading the manual. Mapping the seafloor is not just an academic exercise. It is critical for understanding how our planet actually works. The shape of the ocean floor dictates how deep water currents flow around the globe. These currents carry heat and nutrients, driving the global climate. If we do not know the exact shape of the seafloor, our climate models are fundamentally incomplete. The dark mountains are steering the weather of the surface world. The ocean floor also dictates how tsunamis travel. A slight rise in the seafloor can act as a lens, focusing the destructive energy of a wave toward a specific coastline. Without accurate bathymetry, coastal cities are essentially playing Russian roulette with earthquakes. Mapping the abyss is directly tied to human survival on the surface. Yet we still struggle to fund the ships needed to ping the bottom. Part of the problem is visibility. When a rocket launches, millions of people watch the fire and smoke. It is visceral and inspiring. When a research vessel quietly mows the lawn in the middle of the Pacific, nobody notices. The data they collect is a spreadsheet of depth measurements. It is incredibly important, but it does not make for a compelling television broadcast. The deep ocean suffers from a terrible public relations problem. We are inherently terrestrial creatures. We evolved to understand land and sky. The deep ocean is alien to our senses. The crushing pressure and the total darkness trigger our primal fears. We naturally want to look away from it. We want to focus on the stars because the stars represent an infinite open frontier. The abyss represents a closed, hostile, claustrophobic trap. We map space out of hope, and we ignore the ocean out of dread. But this dread has allowed a creeping unease to settle over our understanding of the planet. We have been busy mapping other worlds while leaving most of our own in the dark. We are strangers in our own home. The Earth is a water planet. The continents are just the dry peaks sticking out of the global ocean. By refusing to map the bottom, we are refusing to acknowledge the true nature of our own world. The people running the Seabed 2030 project are racing to turn the lights on. They are using autonomous drones that can stay at sea for months, silently pinging the bottom without a human crew. They are pleading with shipping companies to leave their sonars running during transit. It is a massive collaborative effort to build a complete picture of the Earth before it is too late. They are trying to close the map with a hole in it. When the map is finally complete, it will be one of the greatest achievements in human history. We will finally be able to look at our planet as a whole. We will see the massive scars where tectonic plates rip apart. We will see the submerged mountains that steer the global currents. The ocean floor will stop being a dark mystery and become a known landscape. It will be the final discovery of the Earth. Until then, we have to live with the ghosts in the blank spaces. We have to accept that massive biological and geological engines are grinding away in the dark, completely unseen. Every time you look out at the ocean, you're looking at a surface that hides a geography larger and more extreme than anything on land. The abyss is right there, just out of sight, quietly running the world. We cannot protect what we do not understand. We cannot predict what we refuse to map. The ignorance we maintain about the deep ocean is a dangerous luxury we can no longer afford. The dark water is rising, warming, and absorbing the consequences of our actions on the surface. The abyss is heavily involved in our future, whether we bother to look at it or not. For now, the ships keep driving back and forth, painting thin strips of clarity onto a massive canvas of black. They are mapping the most hostile environment on Earth, one ping at a time. The work is slow and thankless, but it is the only way forward. We have to map the abyss, because the things hiding in the dark eventually always find a way to affect the light. Off the coast of San Francisco, the water hides a vast and quiet graveyard. You will not find shipwrecked galleons or sunken treasure out by the Farallon Islands. Instead, tens of thousands of barrels sit in the dark, quietly rusting through on the seafloor. For decades, almost nobody bothered to check on them. They were simply pushed off the sides of barges and forgotten, slipping beneath the waves. The scale of this underwater dumping ground is difficult to fully comprehend. Over the course of a few decades, roughly 47,000 barrels of waste were dropped into this specific area. The mid-20th century was a time of boundless optimism and staggering scientific arrogance. Planners looked at the sheer volume of the Pacific Ocean and saw an infinite abyss that could absorb absolutely any mistake we made. The containers held low-level radioactive waste from laboratories and military facilities. Contaminated gloves, broken test tubes, glowing materials packed tightly into steel drums. The disposal method was remarkably crude. Workers would load the heavy drums onto flat barges, tow them out past the site of the coastline, and simply roll them into the water. It was an era when out of sight truly meant completely out of mind. Sometimes, the drums refused to sink. The buoyancy of the sealed containers meant they bobbed stubbornly on the surface of the Pacific, refusing to vanish into the deep. When this happened, the crews had a stark and simple solution. They would pull out rifles and shoot holes in the metal sides until the barrels took on water and finally sank out of view into the cold blue depths. The United States government eventually stopped the practice by the year 1970. A few years later, the 1972 London Convention began placing international restrictions on treating the ocean as a global trash can. It took until a 1993 amendment for the practice to be banned outright worldwide. But the damage was already done, and the barrels were already sitting in the thick mud. Those metal drums have been sitting in salt water for more than half a century. The ocean is incredibly hostile to steel. The corrosion is slow, silent, and entirely inevitable. Researchers sending submersibles down to the site have documented the extensive rust and the structural collapse of many containers. The waste is leaking into the surrounding sediment, exactly as anyone today would have predicted it eventually would. This practice of making our problems disappear into the deep was not limited to radioactive materials. As the Cold War intensified, the military-industrial complex generated massive quantities of chemical weapons. They had to go somewhere. The ocean offered the perfect blanket of secrecy. The United States Army launched Operation Chase, an acronym that perfectly captures the grim efficiency of the era. It stood for Cut Holes and Sink 'Em. Rather than safely neutralizing dangerous munitions, they loaded obsolete vessels full of nerve gas and mustard gas. They towed these floating armories out to deep water, opened the valves, and let the entire ship slide beneath the waves. Whole ships packed with the deadliest substances ever engineered by humans were deliberately scuttled off the coastlines. We did not clean up the mess. We just made it deep enough to forget. Across the Atlantic, a similar quiet tragedy was unfolding. After the fall of the Third Reich, the Allied forces found themselves in possession of an immense stockpile of captured German munitions. Tens of thousands of tons of bombs and artillery shells were gathered together. Once again, the sea was chosen as the ultimate incinerator. Convoys of ships carried the volatile cargo into the cold waters of the Baltic Sea. The Baltic Sea is fundamentally different from the vast Pacific. It is relatively shallow, enclosed, and heavily trafficked by commercial fishing operations. Dropping weapons of mass destruction into these waters was a catastrophic error in judgment. The steel casings of the World War II era bombs have spent decades corroding in the saltwater, becoming fragile and unstable. The toxic payloads inside are slowly weeping into the marine environment. Every so often, the forgotten war reaches back out of the deep. Commercial fishing vessels dragging their heavy nets across the bottom sometimes scoop up more than just fish. They haul up chunks of congealed mustard gas that look deceptively like amber. Unsuspecting fishermen have brought these deadly remnants aboard their boats, only to suffer horrific chemical burns when they touch the substance with their bare hands. The burns are a painful physical reminder that the ocean does not magically erase our history. The water preserves our darkest decisions in a state of suspended animation, waiting for the metal to finally give way. The assumption that the deep sea is disconnected from our daily lives is a fatal misunderstanding of how the planet functions. Everything we drop down there eventually finds a way to resurface. We treated the abyss as a void, a place completely devoid of consequences. The people who authorized these dumps were not necessarily malicious. They simply could not imagine that the deep ocean ecosystem mattered, or that the containers would ever break down. It was a failure of imagination on a global scale. We viewed the immense pressure and the freezing dark as a permanent lock on a very large door. Now, specialized remote vehicles survey the dumping grounds, illuminating the rusted barrels with bright artificial lights. The images they send back are haunting. Crabs and starfish crawl over the decaying steel, making homes among the ruined containers. The marine life does not know it is living in a toxic waste dump. The boundary between the natural ecosystem and our industrial negligence has completely dissolved in the extreme deep. Cleaning up the Farallon Island site is considered practically impossible. The sheer depth and the fragile state of the barrels mean that trying to move them might cause more harm than simply leaving them alone. If a recovery claw crushes a rusted barrel, the entire radioactive payload would instantly release into the water column. We are trapped in a slow-motion disaster of our own making, with no easy exit. The same impossible calculus applies to the chemical weapons in the Baltic. You cannot easily dredge up fragile, leaking bombs loaded with nerve gas. The risk of an accidental detonation or a massive chemical spill is far too high to justify the operation. Authorities are largely forced to monitor the decay and hope the ecosystem can slowly absorb the poison without collapsing completely. It is a terrifying gamble. There's a profound sense of slow-motion guilt attached to these sites. We inherited a problem that we cannot fix, left to us by a generation that genuinely believed the ocean was too big to pollute. Every rusting barrel and every decaying bomb is a monument to human arrogance. We used the largest habitat on Earth as a rug, and we swept our worst inventions right under it. The legacy of Operation Chase remains a dark chapter in military history. The exact coordinates of some sunken ships are still classified or lost to bureaucratic decay. Fishermen occasionally find strange anomalies on their sonar screens, shadowy shapes of scuttled vessels resting in the mud. The silent wrecks are loaded with chemical agents designed to end human lives in agony, now quietly dissolving into the global food chain. The ocean currents are not static. The water at the bottom moves, slowly but relentlessly. The contaminants leaking from these sites do not stay perfectly contained in one spot. They enter the sediment, they are absorbed by microscopic organisms, and they begin the long journey up the food web. The poison we dropped into the deep is slowly making its way back toward the shallow waters where we fish. These dumping grounds force us to confront a very uncomfortable truth about our civilization. We have built an incredible industrial society, but we have never truly figured out how to handle the toxic byproducts of our progress. We relied on the sheer volume of the sea to dilute our mistakes. But dilution is not a solution when the volume of waste reaches the tens of thousands of tons. The divers who occasionally approach the shallowest of the Baltic dumps describe an eerie, lifeless quality to the immediate area. The twisted metal shapes look like natural rock formations until you get close enough to see the stabilizing fins of a bomb. It is an underwater minefield where the triggers are slowly rusting away. The tension is palpable even through the grainy video feeds of the remote cameras. We named the ocean floor the abyss, a word that implies an empty, bottomless pit. This linguistic choice allowed us to justify the dumping. If a place is truly empty and infinite, then filling it with poison carries no moral weight. But the abyss is not empty, and the ocean is a closed system. The toxins are accumulating, and the debt we incurred in the 20th century is coming due. The London Convention was a turning point, a moment when international law finally recognized the vulnerability of the sea. But laws only govern the future. They cannot reach back in time and pull the barrels out of the mud. The 1993 total ban stopped the bleeding, but the patient was already poisoned. We are left managing the slow decay of our past mistakes in the freezing dark. As we grapple with the rusted legacy of the past century, a new threat is emerging in the deep. This time, we are not trying to hide our waste. We're trying to extract the very foundation of the seafloor. The mistakes of the past were driven by a desire to throw things away. The mistakes of the future will be driven by our desperate need to take things out. In the Central Pacific Ocean, a tiny island nation looked at the map and saw a very different kind of fortune. The Republic of Nauru had already exhausted the phosphate mines that once made it rich. The island was environmentally devastated, and its people needed a new source of wealth. They turned their attention outward past the shallow reefs toward the deepest and least understood ecosystem on the entire planet. The target is a vast stretch of the ocean floor known as the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. It is a massive area of the abyssal plain stretching between Hawaii and Mexico. At a glance, it looks like a barren wasteland of soft mud and perpetual darkness. But scattered across this mud are millions of strange, potato-sized lumps of rock. These are polymetallic nodules, and they are incredibly valuable. These nodules are incredibly rich in cobalt, nickel, and manganese. These are the exact metals required to build batteries for electric vehicles and renewable energy storage. The green revolution happening on land requires immense amounts of raw materials. The mining companies look at the deep ocean and see a completely untapped reservoir of the metals needed to save the atmosphere. The financial incentives are absolutely staggering in scale. For decades, the International Seabed Authority worked slowly to create rules for deep-sea mining. The organization is based in Jamaica, tasked with regulating the ocean floor in international waters. Progress was glacial, as diplomats debated the complex environmental and legal frameworks required to mine the abyss. The slow pace frustrated investors who were eager to drop their machines into the water and start pulling up the valuable nodules. In 2021, Nauru changed everything. The tiny nation invoked an obscure legal clause known as the 2-year rule. This clause essentially forced the International Seabed Authority to finalize the mining regulations within 24 months, ready or not. The sudden deadline sent regulators into a panic. They were being pressured to authorize the largest mining operation in history, while the underlying science was entirely unfinished. The fundamental problem is that the abyssal plains are not empty deserts. For a long time, scientists assumed the extreme pressure and lack of sunlight meant very little could survive down there. But recent biological surveys have shattered that assumption completely. Every time a remote vehicle goes down to sample the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, researchers discover an astonishing array of bizarre and fragile life forms living on the mud. The nodules themselves are not just dead rocks. They are the only hard surfaces in a vast sea of soft sediment. Because they take millions of years to form, they provide a stable anchor for deep-sea sponges, anemones, and unique stalked creatures. Entire communities of tiny animals rely on the nodules for survival. If you vacuum up the rocks, you completely destroy the foundation of the local ecosystem. Scientists are identifying thousands of species in the zone that have never been described before. There are translucent worms, blind crustaceans, and ghostly white octopuses hovering just above the seafloor. We are finding creatures so strange they force biologists to rethink how life functions in the extreme deep. We do not even have scientific names for most of these animals yet, let alone a thorough understanding of them. The prospect of mining brings a deep dread shading into anger among researchers. We are on the verge of destroying an ecosystem before we have even finished cataloging what lives there. The mining machines are massive, tank-like vehicles designed to grind across the seafloor and suck up the top layer of sediment. They will obliterate everything in their path, leaving behind a scarred landscape that will not recover. The destruction does not stop at the mechanical treads of the vehicles. As the machines chew through the mud, they will kick up enormous plumes of fine sediment. In the completely still water of the abyss, these clouds of dirt could drift for hundreds of miles before finally settling. The suspended particles threaten to choke the delicate filter-feeding organisms that rely on the clear water to survive. The deep sea is a world defined by absolute silence. The creatures down there communicate and navigate using subtle vibrations and faint bioluminescence. The arrival of massive industrial mining equipment will introduce a terrifying level of noise pollution into this quiet world. The grinding metal and the powerful pumps will create a localized acoustic nightmare, potentially disrupting the mating and feeding behaviors of entire species across the plain. The mining companies argue that the damage is a necessary trade. They claim that destroying a portion of the ocean floor is better than clearing rainforests in Indonesia or exploiting workers in the Congo. They frame deep-sea mining as the painful but essential cost of transitioning away from fossil fuels. It is a compelling argument, but it asks us to accept the deliberate destruction of the ocean. Environmentalists counter that we are repeating the same mistakes we always make. We find a new frontier, declare it empty, and immediately begin tearing it apart for profit. They argue that battery technology is evolving rapidly, and we may not even need these specific metals in a decade. If we wait, we might find alternatives. But the pressure from the financial markets is relentless and incredibly powerful. The International Seabed Authority meetings have become a battleground. Scientists present grim data about the fragility of the deep-sea ecosystem, while mining executives present glossy charts about global metal demand. The diplomats are caught in the middle, trying to write rules for a process that nobody fully understands. The tension in the conference rooms is palpable as the future of the ocean floor hangs in the balance. A single mining operation could easily run for 30 years. Once the machines are turned on, the sheer momentum of the investment will make it impossible to stop. If the sediment plumes are worse than predicted, or the noise pollution causes mass die-offs, there will be no way to pull the plug. The contracts will be signed, the money will be flowing, and the damage will be completely irreversible. The creatures of the Clarion-Clipperton Zone are uniquely vulnerable. Because the environment is so stable, evolution has favored slow-growing, long-lived species. Some of the deep-sea sponges are estimated to be thousands of years old. If a mining machine crushes a coral bed, it will not bounce back in a few years. The recovery time is measured in millennia. which is effectively permanent on a human timescale. Nauru views the situation as a matter of basic survival. As climate change causes sea levels to rise, the island is facing an existential threat from the very ocean they want to mine. The government sees the nodules as their only realistic chance to build a seawall and secure their future. It is a tragic irony that saving their island might require destroying the deep-sea ecosystem. Other Pacific nations have strongly opposed the rush to mine. Countries like Fiji and Palau have called for a complete moratorium on deep-sea extraction. They argue that the ocean is a connected system, and the risks of catastrophic environmental damage are simply too high. The cultural connection to the sea runs deep in the Pacific, and the idea of grinding up the bottom is met with fierce resistance. The 2-year rule deadline has already passed, leaving a chaotic legal gray area. The International Seabed Authority has not yet finalized the mining code, but companies are pushing to submit applications anyway. The regulatory framework is completely fractured. We are watching a gold rush unfold in real time, completely lacking a strong government hand to slow it down. The machines are built and entirely ready to deploy. The first test runs of the mining equipment have already taken place. Support ships lower the massive tractors down through 3 miles of water, paying out miles of heavy cable. When the machines hit the bottom, they send up clouds of dark mud that billow like smoke in the camera lights. The visual evidence of the disruption is stark, proving that clean mining is an absolute myth. The polymetallic nodules are effectively the battery of the deep ocean. They store the metals we want, but they also provide the literal foundation for life in the abyss. We cannot take the rocks without taking the life attached to them. The compromise being offered by the mining industry is a sanitized version of strip mining, hidden beneath thousands of meters of dark water where nobody can see. The scientific community is racing against the clock. Research vessels are desperately trying to sample the zone before the commercial operations begin. Every expedition returns with jars full of new species, frantically documenting the biodiversity before it is erased. It is a morbid form of biology, cataloging a unique ecosystem that is actively scheduled for demolition by multinational corporations. The choice we face in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone will define our relationship with the ocean for the next century. If we choose to mine the abyss, we cross a threshold we can never uncross. We will prove that no place on Earth is too remote, too deep, or too fragile to be fed into the industrial machine. The silent dark will be replaced by the roar of extraction. We are risking species we never got the chance to name, all in the pursuit of the raw materials to power our modern lives. The dread is real, and the consequences are permanent. But while we debate tearing up the sea floor for metals, a completely different kind of critical infrastructure is already lying unguarded in the mud, and someone has started quietly cutting the wires. The modern internet feels like magic. We talk about the cloud as if our data simply floats in the air, completely disconnected from the physical world. But the reality is far more industrial and much more fragile. Nearly everything the modern world calls the internet actually runs through physical cables lying unguarded on the ocean floor. The vast majority of intercontinental data travels through these thin, silent wires. An undersea fiber optic cable is surprisingly small. It is roughly the size of a standard garden hose. Inside, incredibly thin strands of glass carry pulses of light containing everything from financial transactions to private messages. These cables stretch across thousands of miles of ocean, completely exposed in the mud. They are the absolute lifeblood of global communication, and they are incredibly vulnerable to anyone who wants to cause chaos. For a long time, the primary threats to these cables were accidental. Fishing trawlers would snag them with heavy nets, or underwater earthquakes would trigger landslides that snapped the lines. Telecommunication companies built repair ships specifically to hunt down the breaks and splice the wires back together. It was considered a routine maintenance issue, but in the past few years, the pattern of damage has changed completely. In October 2023, the Baltic Connector pipeline was suddenly severed. At exactly the same time, nearby telecom cables connecting several European countries went completely dark. The sudden loss of pressure and data sent an immediate wave of panic through the regional governments. This did not look like a random act of nature. It looked like a highly coordinated, deliberate attack on critical underwater infrastructure. Investigators traced the damage to a very specific cause. A foreign flag vessel had dragged its massive anchor across the sea floor for miles, tearing right through the pipeline and the cables. The ship claimed it was an unfortunate maritime accident caused by rough weather. But the sheer improbability of an anchor dragging exactly across multiple critical infrastructure lines raised immediate and intense suspicion among intelligence agencies. A month later, in November 2024, the situation escalated. Two more crucial communication cables in the Baltic Sea were suddenly cut. Once again, the damage occurred right along the path of another foreign flag ship moving slowly through the area. The coincidences were piling up too fast to ignore. It was becoming clear that someone was testing the waters, literally and figuratively. European investigators in both cases stopped short of formally proving deliberate sabotage. That hesitation is precisely what makes the pattern so incredibly unsettling. The ocean provides perfect, plausible deniability. You cannot put a crime scene tape around a cable break lying thousands of feet underwater. You cannot easily prove that a dragging anchor was deployed maliciously rather than accidentally. The ambiguity is the weapon. This is the very definition of gray zone warfare. It is a strategy designed to damage a rival nation without ever crossing the threshold of open conflict. You do not fire a missile at a data center. You simply let a rusty commercial freighter drag its anchor across the single wire connecting that data center to the rest of the world. It is deniable, cheap, and devastatingly effective. The silence of the deep makes it the perfect environment for this kind of shadow conflict. There are no cameras on the seafloor, and sonar only sees so much. Submarines and specialized deep water drones can operate completely undetected for weeks. NATO navies have reported a significant increase in Russian submarine activity near the major transatlantic cable routes. The military tension is returning to the deep ocean. The fear of a coordinated severing event keeps intelligence officers awake at night. If an adversary managed to cut 4 or 5 specific cables in the Atlantic simultaneously, the results would be catastrophic. Entire countries could be abruptly severed from a global internet. The sheer volume of data cannot simply be rerouted through satellites. The physical cables handle 99% of the international data load. If the cables go dark, the modern economy stops instantly. Trillions of dollars in daily financial transactions would freeze. International banking systems rely entirely on the exact microsecond timing provided by the fiber optics. Supply chains would completely halt as shipping manifests fail to transmit. The immediate financial damage would rival a major natural disaster, all achieved by cutting a few hoses in the mud. We built a fully connected civilization, but we routed the connections through the most hostile and unguarded environment on the planet. The cables are entirely undefended. You cannot station a warship above every mile of wire. They rely on the sheer vastness of the ocean to remain hidden. But modern mapping technology means that every adversary knows exactly where the critical arteries are buried. The repair process is slow and entirely dependent on calm weather. When a cable is cut, a specialized ship must sail to the coordinates, deploy a heavy grapple, and blindly drag the bottom until it hooks the broken end. Then it must haul the wire up to the surface, slice open the armor, and perfectly fuse the microscopic glass strands back together. It could take weeks to fix one cut. If multiple cables were severed in a storm, the repair fleet would be completely overwhelmed. The logistical bottleneck is a massive vulnerability. War planners look at the repair ships and realize they are high-value targets in any future conflict. Sinking a single repair vessel could keep a severed cable offline for months, plunging an entire region into a prolonged digital blackout. The paranoia is seeping into the commercial sector. Tech giants are beginning to realize they cannot rely on governments to protect their underwater assets. Companies are experimenting with acoustic monitoring systems, trying to listen for the sound of dragging anchors or approaching submarines. They are trying to turn the cables into their own security sensors, listening to the dark water for any sign of an incoming threat. The ocean was once viewed as a massive protective moat. It kept enemies far away and provided a buffer against sudden attacks. But technology has completely inverted that reality. The ocean is now the very medium through which the attack will travel. The deep water is no longer a shield. It is the primary vector for economic disruption, hidden right beneath the rolling waves. The recent cable cuts in the Baltic feel like a dress rehearsal. They are a demonstration of capability, a quiet reminder that the lights can be turned off at any moment. The foreign ships loitering near the infrastructure are sending a message without saying a single word. They're showing how easy it is to break the most important physical system built in the modern era. The international laws governing the ocean floor are entirely inadequate to handle intentional sabotage. The seabed is a jurisdictional nightmare. If a ship flying the flag of one country cuts a cable owned by a second country in the international waters near a third country, the legal response is hopelessly tangled. The attackers know this, and they exploit the confusion to avoid any real consequences. The physical reality of the internet is a stark reminder of our dependence on the sea. We look at glowing screens and think we are floating in a digital utopia. But every pixel of international video and every line of code is physically dragging itself across the freezing mud of the abyss. Our entire society hangs by a fragile glass thread in the dark. The vulnerability of the cables forces us to reconsider what national security actually means in the 21st century. A strong military cannot stop a commercial freighter from dropping its anchor in the wrong place. The threat is asymmetrical and incredibly difficult to deter. The newest war might be running through the exact same deep silence the Cold War used decades ago. The tension is palpable in the command centers monitoring the network traffic. When a slight drop in latency occurs, the operators immediately wonder if a wire has been snagged. The monitoring software cannot distinguish between an underwater landslide and a deliberate attack. It only knows that the light has stopped arriving. The uncertainty amplifies the dread of a larger, coordinated strike. We are slowly realizing that the era of uncontested oceans is completely over. The deep sea is becoming a contested battle space, where the targets are not enemy fleets, but the critical infrastructure of daily civilian life. The wires that connect us are also the chains that make us incredibly vulnerable. We tied the continents together, and now someone is standing over the knot with a knife. The modern world is built on a foundation of incredibly fragile assumptions. We assume the data will always flow, the power will always stay on, and the ocean will quietly absorb our infrastructure without a fight. But the recent cuts prove that the system can be broken easily. The paranoid modern dread is entirely justified by the physical reality of the seafloor. While governments scramble to protect the glass wires holding the future together, the ocean is quietly working to erase the past. Even the most legendary structures we leave in the deep are not immune to the relentless consumption of the abyss. The water does not just hide our secrets. It eats them alive, one atom at a time, until nothing is left but the memory. The most famous shipwreck on Earth is actively being consumed in the dark. The Titanic is not frozen in time, perfectly preserved in a state of romantic tragedy. It is being eaten alive by a microscopic organism that did not even have a scientific name until researchers caught it in the act. The wreck is slowly dissolving into the water column, returning to the sea. The discovery of the wreck was a moment of global awe. On September 1st, 1985, Robert Ballard and his team were staring at blurry monitors aboard a research vessel. Suddenly, the ghostly image of the massive bow emerged from the gloom. The ship had been missing for over 70 years. Finding it roughly 3,800 meters down felt like a miracle of modern exploration. The haunting images of the rusted bow railing became instantly iconic. The ship sat upright in the freezing black water, surrounded by a massive debris field of coal, plates, and personal belongings. For a brief moment, it felt like we had conquered the deep, reaching down to reclaim a lost piece of human history. We thought the extreme cold and immense pressure would preserve the ship forever. But the ocean is an active, hungry environment. When researchers returned to the site in the following decades, they noticed a dramatic deterioration. The clean lines of the steel hull were becoming obscured by massive formations of rust. They looked like melting iron icicles, hanging heavily from the decks and the ruined grand staircase. These formations were named rusticles, and they were entirely biological. In 2010, scientists finally isolated the culprit. They identified a completely new species of rust-eating bacterium colonizing the hull. They named it Halomonas titanicae, a tribute to the legendary ship it was slowly destroying. This microbe does not just live on the metal. It actively consumes the iron, extracting the energy it needs to survive in the absolute darkness of the abyss. The bacteria pull the iron directly out of the steel plating, leaving behind a brittle, porous shell that eventually collapses under its own weight. The rusticles are essentially the waste products of this microscopic feast. They are incredibly fragile, turning into a fine cloud of red dust if a submersible accidentally brushes against them. The structural integrity of the entire ship is failing rapidly. The estimates for when the wreck will effectively vanish are grim. Some studies suggest the hull could collapse into a completely unrecognizable pile of, or in just a couple of decades. Others argue the thicker steel might last a century, but the trajectory is completely irreversible. The captain's bathtub, once a famous landmark for visiting submarines, has already disappeared into the decaying debris inside the ship. The rapid decay has sparked a bitter moral argument over the site. Robert Ballard has spent years passionately arguing that the wreck should be left alone. He views it as a mass grave, a quiet cemetery that deserves respect and silence. He believes that landing submersibles on the deck and removing artifacts from museum displays is a fundamental violation of the site's solemn history. But the relentless push for deep-sea tourism ignored the pleas for silence. The Titanic exerts a gravitational pull on a certain kind of wealthy adventurer. The allure of seeing the famous bow in person was too strong to resist. Commercial companies began offering incredibly expensive tickets to ride down in small submersibles, turning the site of a horrific tragedy into an exclusive tourist destination. The people who kept going back developed a profound, almost obsessive connection to the wreck. Paul-Henri Nargeolet was one of those men. He was a deeply experienced French submersible pilot who knew the debris field better than almost anyone alive. He had personally dived to the Titanic more times than most people have visited their local beach. The ship was his life's work. Nargeolet commanded immense respect in the tight-knit community of deep-sea explorers. He understood the risks of the abyss intimately, yet he kept returning to the freezing dark. He helped recover thousands of artifacts, preserving the physical memory of the ship before the bacteria could eat it all. His dedication to the site was absolute, driven by a desire to physically touch history. The cruel irony of his final dive is difficult to process. In June 2023, Nargeolet was aboard the experimental submersible Titan, descending toward the wreck he loved so much. The implosion was violent and instantaneous. The man who had spent his entire career safely navigating the crushing depths was suddenly killed by the very environment he had mastered. The loss of the Titan closed a tragic loop that began in 1912. We keep returning to the exact same spot in the ocean, drawn by the hubris of the past, only to commit the hubris of the present. The site has claimed new victims, adding modern debris to the historical wreckage. The deep sea does not care about our fascination or our advanced technology. The grief surrounding the Titan disaster is mixed with a profound sense of moral horror. We turn a grave into a tourist attraction, and the ocean responded with brutal physical physics. The wreck is not a playground. It is a hostile, unforgiving environment that requires absolute perfection to survive. The ocean tolerates visitors, but it never actually welcomes them. Ballard's argument for leaving the wreck alone feels completely vindicated by the recent tragedy. The relentless desire to look at the rusting metal led directly to the loss of 5 more lives. The grave keeps closing behind us, a stark reminder that the bottom of the ocean is fundamentally incompatible with human arrogance. We cannot conquer the abyss. We can only temporarily survive it. The Halomonas titanicae bacteria continue their slow, silent work on the hull, completely oblivious to the human drama playing out above them. They are breaking down the mighty ship into raw iron, returning the refined metal back to the natural cycle of the sea. The ocean reclaims absolutely everything eventually, tearing down our greatest engineering achievements one microscopic bite at a time. In a few decades, there will be nothing left to visit. The bow will collapse into the mud, and the legendary profile of the Titanic will be erased forever. The bacteria will finish their meal and slowly die off, leaving only a stain of iron on the abyssal plain. The sea will look exactly as it did before the ship ever sank. The desire to preserve the wreck is a uniquely human impulse. We want to freeze time and hold onto the physical artifacts of our history. But the ocean is an engine of constant chemical change. It does not respect our museums or our memories. It is a massive recycling facility, breaking down steel and bone with equal efficiency in the crushing, freezing dark. Nargelet's death casts a long, dark shadow over the future of deep-sea exploration. The tragedy forced the entire industry to pause and reconsider the true cost of descending to these extreme depths. The pursuit of the ultimate view ended in the ultimate price. The Titanic remains a symbol of technological failure, both in 1912 and in 2023. The people who died on the Titan were looking for a connection to the past, a way to experience the reality of the deep ocean firsthand. But the reality they found was the absolute, unforgiving pressure of the water column. The ocean does not offer second chances. A single flaw in the carbon fiber hull was all it took to end the journey instantly. The debris of the Titan now rests near the bow of the Titanic, a permanent addition to the sprawling field of wreckage. Future generations of explorers will have to navigate past the remains of the modern submersible to see the historical ship. The site is layered with tragedy, a monument to our repeated failures to understand the true power of the sea. We view the ocean as a static background to human events, a calm blue surface on the map. But the abyss is fiercely active, consuming our ships, dissolving our chemicals, and constantly reshaping its own floor. We are visitors in an alien world, entirely dependent on thin pressure hulls to keep the reality of the deep at bay. The water always wins. The consumption of the Titanic is a quiet climax to a century of human interaction with the deep sea. We built an unsinkable ship. We lost it, we found it, and now we are watching it vanish entirely. It is a humbling reminder of our temporary status on this planet. The ocean is vast, patient, and incredibly thorough in its erasure of our mistakes. We spend so much time worrying about the ships that sink into the mud, we often forget that the mud itself is moving. The seafloor is not a solid foundation. It is a thin crust sitting over a boiling engine, and just beneath the dark water, the sleeping fault lines are beginning to wake up. The ocean floor is not a solid foundation, but a restless machine. The same restless seams in the ocean floor that give rise to entirely new forms of life are the ones capable of erasing a coastal city in under 20 minutes. The water above remains completely indifferent to the panic below. Energy accumulates in silence. The sheer scale of this planetary mechanism is terrifying. We forget that the ground beneath the sea is moving. December 2004 brought this violence to the surface when the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami killed roughly 230,000 people. The rock groans under centuries of mounting pressure. This is the undeniable truth of the deep abyss. The fish swim completely oblivious to the megathrust building underneath. A deep tectonic scar waits in the absolute darkness. The rock acts with a slow, grinding patience. In March 2011, the Tohoku earthquake off Japan triggered the Fukushima disaster. The sheer scale of this planetary mechanism is terrifying. The rock groans under centuries of mounting pressure. The ocean floor is not a solid foundation, but a restless machine. The fish swim completely oblivious to the megathrust building underneath. A deep tectonic scar waits in the absolute darkness. Energy accumulates in silence. The Cascadia subduction zone off the Pacific Northwest has been dormant since the year 1700, but is capable of an equally catastrophic rupture. We forget that the ground beneath the sea is moving. The water above remains completely indifferent to the panic below. This is the undeniable truth of the deep abyss. The rock acts with a slow, grinding patience. The ocean floor is a restless machine. The ocean floor is not a solid foundation, but a restless machine. The same restless seams in the ocean floor that give rise to entirely new forms of life are the ones capable of erasing a coastal city in under 20 minutes. The water above remains completely indifferent to the panic below. Energy accumulates in silence. The sheer scale of this planetary mechanism is terrifying. We forget that the ground beneath the sea is moving. December 2004 brought this violence to the surface when the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami killed roughly 230,000 people. The rock groans under centuries of mounting pressure. This is the undeniable truth of the deep abyss. The fish swim completely oblivious to the megathrust building underneath. A deep tectonic scar waits in the absolute darkness. The rock in March 2011, the Tohoku earthquake off Japan triggered the Fukushima disaster. The sheer scale of this planetary mechanism is terrifying. The rock groans under centuries of mounting pressure. The ocean floor is not a solid foundation, but a restless machine. Has been dormant. The fish swim completely oblivious, but is capable of an equally catastrophic rupture. A deep tectonic scar beneath the absolute darkness. Moving. Energy the water accumulates above remains completely indifferent to the panic below. This is the undeniable truth of the deep abyss. The rock acts with a slow, grinding patience. The ocean floor is not a solid foundation, but a restless machine. The same restless seams in the ocean floor that give rise to entirely new forms of life are the ones capable of erasing a coastal city in under 20 minutes. The water above remains completely indifferent to the panic below. Energy accumulates in silence. The sheer scale of this planetary mechanism is terrifying. We forget that the ground beneath the sea is moving. December 2004 brought this violence to the surface when the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami killed roughly 230,000 people. The rock groans under centuries of mounting pressure. This is the undeniable truth of the deep abyss. The fish swim completely oblivious to the megathrust building underneath. A deep tectonic scar waits in the absolute darkness. The rock in March 2011, the Tohoku earthquake off Japan triggered the Fukushima disaster. The sheer scale of this planetary mechanism is terrifying. The rock groans under centuries of mounting pressure. The ocean floor is not a solid foundation, but a restless machine. Has been dormant. The fish swim completely oblivious, but is capable of an equally catastrophic rupture. A deep tectonic scar beneath the absolute darkness. Moving. Energy
The water
accumulates
above
and remains
silence.
completely indifferent to the panic below. This is the undeniable truth of the deep abyss. The rock acts with a slow, grinding patience. The ocean floor is not a solid foundation, but a restless machine. The same restless seams in the ocean floor that give rise to entirely new forms of life are the ones capable of erasing a coastal city in under 20 minutes. The water above remains completely indifferent to the panic below. Energy accumulates in silence. The sheer scale of this planetary mechanism is terrifying. We forget that the ground beneath the sea is moving. December 2004 brought this violence to the surface when the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami killed roughly 230,000 people. The rock groans under centuries of mounting pressure. This is the undeniable truth of the deep abyss. The fish swim completely oblivious to the megathrust building underneath. A deep tectonic scar waits in the absolute darkness. The rock in March 2011, the Tohoku earthquake off Japan triggered the Fukushima disaster. The sheer scale of this planetary mechanism is terrifying. The rock groans under centuries of mounting pressure. The ocean floor is not a solid foundation, but a restless machine. Has been dormant. The fish swim completely oblivious, but is capable of an equally catastrophic rupture. A deep tectonic scar beneath in absolute darkness. Energy the water accumulates and remains completely indifferent to the panic below. This is the undeniable truth of the deep abyss. The rock acts with a slow, grinding patience. The ocean floor is not a solid foundation, but a restless machine. The same restless seams in the ocean floor that give rise to entirely new forms of life are the ones capable of erasing a coastal city in under 20 minutes. The water above remains completely indifferent to the panic below. Energy accumulates in silence. The sheer scale of this planetary mechanism is terrifying. We forget that the ground beneath the sea is moving. December 2004 brought this violence to the surface when the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami killed roughly 230,000 people. The rock groans under centuries of mounting pressure. This is the undeniable truth of the deep abyss. The fish swim completely oblivious to the megathrust building underneath. A deep tectonic scar waits in the absolute darkness. The rock in March 2011, the Tohoku earthquake off Japan triggered the Fukushima disaster. The sheer scale of this planetary mechanism is terrifying. The rock groans under centuries of mounting pressure. The ocean floor is not a solid foundation, but a restless machine. Has been dormant. The fish swim completely oblivious, but is capable of an equally catastrophic rupture. A deep tectonic scar beneath in absolute darkness. Energy accumulates and remains completely indifferent to the panic below. This is the undeniable truth of the deep abyss. The rock acts with a slow, grinding patience. The ocean floor is not a solid foundation, but a restless machine. The same restless seams in the ocean floor that give rise to entirely new forms of life are the ones capable of erasing a coastal city in under 20 minutes. The water above remains completely indifferent to the panic below. Energy accumulates in silence. The sheer scale of this planetary mechanism is terrifying. We forget that the ground beneath the sea is moving. December 2004 brought this violence to the surface when the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami killed roughly 230,000 people. The rock groans under centuries of mounting pressure. This is the undeniable truth of the deep abyss. The fish swim completely oblivious to the megathrust building underneath. A deep tectonic scar waits in the absolute darkness. The rock in March 2011, the Tohoku earthquake off Japan triggered the Fukushima disaster. The sheer scale of this planetary mechanism is terrifying. The rock groans under centuries of mounting pressure. The ocean floor is not a solid foundation, but a restless machine. Has been dormant. The fish swim completely oblivious, but is capable of an equally catastrophic rupture. A deep tectonic scar beneath in absolute darkness. Energy the water accumulates and remains completely indifferent to the panic below. This is the undeniable truth of the deep abyss. The rock acts with a slow, grinding patience. There's a point in the Pacific so remote that astronauts orbiting overhead are, at that moment, the nearest living humans to it, and it is where we quietly sink our dead spacecraft. The isolation here is profound and absolute. There is no human sound for thousands of kilometers. This is a biological desert hidden from the sun. The abyss offers a perfect place to hide our largest mistakes. The oceanic pole of inaccessibility is roughly 2,600 kilometers from the nearest land in any direction. It has been used since the early 1970s as a deliberate graveyard for decommissioned satellites and rocket stages. The cold water preserves the twisted metal of old achievements. A quiet museum of human ambition rests in the dark mud. The currents carry no life to this abandoned place. The controlled 2001 orbit of the Mir space station brought the massive structure down into this exact patch of ocean. The glowing fragments rain down unseen. The ocean floor absorbs these falling titans without a trace. We use the vastness of the sea as a convenient void. The astronauts above pass over in complete silence. This is a biological desert hidden from the sun. NASA plans to deorbit the International Space Station into this same patch of ocean around 2030 using a SpaceX-built vehicle. Outer space and the deep sea end up in the same grave. The isolation here is profound and absolute. There is no human sound for thousands of kilometers. The cold water preserves the Pacific so remote that astronauts orbiting overhead, a quiet museum at that human ambition, nearest living humans to it, and it is where we quietly sink our dead spacecraft. The isolation here is profound and absolute. There is no human sound for thousands of kilometers. This is a biological pole desert of inaccessibility. Is roughly offers a perfect place to hide from the nearest land in any direction. It has been used since the early 1970s as a deliberate graveyard for decommissioned satellites and rocket stages. The cold water preserves the twisted metal of old achievements. A quiet museum of human ambition rests in the dark mud. The currents carry no life. The controlled 2001 orbit of the Mir space station brought the massive structure down into this exact patch of ocean. The glowing fragments rain down unseen. The ocean floor absorbs these falling titans without a trace. We use the vastness of the sea as a convenient void. The astronauts above pass over in complete silence. This is a biological desert hidden from the sun. NASA plans to deorbit the International Space Station into this same patch of ocean around 2030 using a SpaceX-built vehicle. Outer space and the deep sea end up in the same grave. The isolation here is profound and absolute. There is no human sound for thousands of kilometers. The cold water preserves the twisted metal of old achievements. A quiet museum of human ambition rests in the dark mud. There's a point in the Pacific so remote that astronauts orbiting overhead are, at that moment, the nearest living humans to it, and it is where we quietly sink our dead spacecraft. The isolation here is profound and absolute. There is no human sound for thousands of kilometers. This is a biological pole of inaccessibility. Is the abyss offers a perfect place to hide from the nearest land in any direction. It has been used since the early 1970s as a deliberate graveyard for decommissioned satellites and rocket stages. The cold water preserves the twisted metal of old achievements. A quiet museum of human ambition rests in the dark mud. The currents carry no life to this abandoned place. The controlled 2001 orbit of the Mir space station brought the massive structure down into this exact patch of ocean. The glowing fragments rain down unseen. The ocean floor absorbs these falling titans without a trace. We use the vastness of the sea as a convenient void. The astronauts above pass over in complete silence. This is a biological desert hidden from the sun. NASA plans to deorbit the International Space Station into this same patch of ocean around 2030 using a SpaceX-built vehicle. Outer space and the deep sea end up in the same grave. The isolation here is profound and absolute. There is no human sound for thousands of kilometers. The cold water preserves the twisted metal of old achievements. A quiet museum of human ambition in the Pacific so remote that astronauts orbiting overhead are, at that moment, the nearest living humans to it, and it is where we quietly sink our dead spacecraft. The isolation here is profound and absolute. There is no human sound for thousands of kilometers. This is a biological desert hidden from the sun. The abyss offers a perfect place to hide our largest mistakes. The oceanic pole of inaccessibility is roughly 2,600 kilometers from the nearest land in any direction. It has been used since the early 1970s as a deliberate graveyard for decommissioned satellites and rocket stages. The cold water preserves the twisted metal of old achievements. A quiet museum of human ambition rests in the dark mud. The currents carry no life to this abandoned place. The controlled 2001 deorbit of the Mir space station brought the massive structure down into this exact patch of ocean. The glowing fragments rain down unseen. The ocean floor absorbs these falling titans without a trace. We use the vastness of the sea as a convenient void. The astronauts above pass over in complete silence. This is a biological desert hidden from the sun. NASA plans to deorbit the International Space Station into this same patch of ocean around 2030 using a SpaceX-built vehicle. Outer space and the deep sea end up in the same grave. The isolation here is profound and absolute. There is no human sound for thousands of kilometers. The cold water preserves the twisted metal of old achievements. A quiet museum of human ambition rests in the dark mud. There's a point in the Pacific so remote that astronauts orbiting overhead are, at that moment, the nearest living humans to it, and it is where we quietly sink our dead spacecraft. The isolation here is profound and absolute. There is no human sound for thousands of kilometers. This is a biological desert hidden from the sun. The abyss offers a perfect place to hide our largest mistakes. The oceanic pole of inaccessibility is roughly 2,600 kilometers from the nearest land in any direction. It has been used since the early 1970s as a deliberate graveyard for decommissioned satellites and rocket stages. The cold water preserves the twisted metal of old achievements. A quiet museum of human ambition rests in the dark mud. The currents carry no life to this abandoned place. The controlled 2001 deorbit of the Mir space station brought the massive structure down into this exact patch of ocean. The glowing fragments rain down unseen. The ocean floor absorbs these falling titans without a trace. We use the vastness of the sea as a convenient void. The astronauts above pass over in complete silence. This is a biological desert hidden from the sun. NASA plans to deorbit the International Space Station into this same patch of ocean around 2030 using a SpaceX-built vehicle. Outer space and the deep sea end up in the same grave. The isolation here is profound and absolute. There is no human sound for thousands of kilometers. The cold water preserves in the Pacific so remote that astronauts orbiting overhead a quiet museum at that human ambition nearest living humans to it, and it is where we quietly sink our dead spacecraft. The isolation here is profound and absolute. There is no human sound for thousands of kilometers. This is a biological desert hidden from the sun. The abyss offers a perfect place to hide our largest mistakes. The oceanic pole of inaccessibility is roughly 2,600 kilometers from the nearest land in any direction. It has been used since the early 1970s as a deliberate graveyard for decommissioned satellites and rocket stages. The cold water preserves the twisted metal of old achievements. A quiet museum of human ambition rests in the dark mud. The currents carry no life to this abandoned place. The controlled 2001 deorbit of the Mir space station brought the massive structure down into this exact patch of ocean. The glowing fragments rain down unseen. The ocean floor absorbs these falling titans without a trace. We use the vastness of the sea as a convenient void. The astronauts above pass over in complete silence. This is a biological desert hidden from the sun. NASA plans to deorbit the International Space Station into this same patch of ocean around 2030 using a SpaceX-built vehicle. Outer space and the deep sea end up in the same grave. The isolation here is profound and absolute. There is no human sound for thousands of kilometers. When a submersible finally reached the single deepest point on the entire planet, it found a creature no scientist had ever documented, sitting a few meters from a plastic bag. The crushing pressure here is difficult to even imagine. The sediment is ancient and completely undisturbed. The utter blackness is illuminated only by artificial lights. This place was supposed to be completely beyond our reach. Victor Vescovo completed his 2019 5 Deeps expedition dive to Challenger Deep. He became only the fourth human being to ever reach that extreme depth in a submersible. The creatures that live here are adapted to a harsh reality. The cold is absolute and unyielding. The silent depths hold onto whatever drifts down. We expected a pristine, untouched wilderness at the bottom. The limiting factor illuminated a landscape of fine gray sediment. The external cameras captured new species while also photographing food wrappers resting quietly in the freezing mud. It is a world completely disconnected from the surface. The discovery is a quiet and haunting revelation. The crushing pressure here is difficult to even imagine. The sediment is ancient and completely undisturbed. The utter blackness is absolute. His blunt public disappointment at finding human trash already waiting in the one place theoretically beyond our reach serves as a quiet gut punch. We contaminated the abyss before we explored it. The silent depths hold onto whatever drifts down. We expected a pristine, untouched wilderness at the bottom. The creatures that live here are adapted to a harsh reality. The cold is absolute and unyielding. When a submersible finally reached the single deepest point on the entire planet, it found a creature no scientist had ever documented, sitting a few meters from a plastic bag. The crushing pressure here is difficult to even imagine. The sediment is ancient and completely undisturbed. The utter blackness is illuminated only by artificial lights. This place was supposed to be completely beyond our reach. Victor Vescovo completed his 2019 5 Deeps expedition dive to Challenger Deep. He became only the fourth human being to ever reach that extreme depth in a submersible. The creatures that live here are adapted to a harsh reality. The cold is absolute and unyielding. The limiting factor illuminated a landscape of we expected a pristine, untouched the external cameras captured new species while also photographing food wrappers resting quietly in the freezing mud. It is a world completely disconnected from the surface. The discovery is a quiet and haunting revelation. The crushing pressure here is difficult to even finding human trash. The sediment already waiting in the one place theoretically beyond our reach. The utter blackness as a quiet absolute. We contaminated the abyss before we explored it. The silent depths hold onto whatever drifts down. We expected a pristine, untouched wilderness at the bottom. The creatures that live here are adapted to a harsh reality. The cold is absolute and unyielding. It found a creature no scientist had ever documented, sitting a few meters from a plastic bag. The crushing pressure here is difficult to even imagine. The sediment is ancient and completely undisturbed. The utter blackness is illuminated only by artificial lights. This place was supposed to be completely beyond our reach. Victor Vescovo completed his 2019 5 Deeps expedition dive to Challenger Deep. He became only the fourth human being to ever reach that extreme depth in a submersible. The creatures that live here are adapted to a harsh reality. The cold is absolute and unyielding. The limiting factor illuminated a landscape of we expected a pristine, untouched the external cameras captured new species while also photographing food wrappers resting quietly in the freezing mud. It is a world completely disconnected from the surface. The discovery is a quiet and haunting revelation. The crushing pressure
blunt
here
public
is
disappointment
difficult
to even
finding
imagine.
human trash.
The sediment
already
is
waiting
ancient
in the
and
one place
completely
theoretically
undisturbed.
beyond our reach.
The utter
serves
blackness
as a
is
quiet
absolute.
We contaminated the abyss before we explored it. The silent depths hold on to whatever drifts down. We expected a pristine, untouched wilderness at the bottom. The creatures that live here are
finally
adapted to a
reached
harsh
the
reality.
single
The cold
deepest
is
point on the
absolute
entire
and
planet.
unyielding. It found a creature no scientist had ever documented, sitting a few meters from a plastic bag. The crushing pressure here is difficult to even imagine. The sediment is ancient and completely undisturbed. The utter blackness is illuminated only by artificial lights. This place was supposed to be completely beyond our reach. Victor Vescovo completed his 2019 5 Deeps expedition dive to Challenger Deep. He became only the fourth human being to ever reach that extreme depth in a submersible. The creatures that live here are adapted to a harsh reality. The cold is absolute and unyielding. The limiting factor illuminated a landscape of we expected a pristine, untouched. The external cameras captured new species while also photographing food wrappers resting quietly in the freezing mud. It is a world completely disconnected from the surface. The discovery is a quiet and haunting revelation. The crushing pressure here
public
is difficult to even
finding
imagine.
human trash.
The sediment
already
is
waiting
ancient
in the
and
one place
completely
theoretically
undisturbed.
beyond our reach.
The utter blackness
serves as a quiet
absolute. We contaminated the abyss before we explored it. The silent depths hold on to whatever drifts down. We expected a pristine, untouched wilderness at the bottom. The creatures that live here are
finally
adapted to a
reached
harsh
the
reality.
single
The cold is
deepest point on the
absolute
entire
and
planet.
unyielding. It found a creature no scientist had ever documented, sitting a few meters from a plastic bag. The crushing pressure here is difficult to even imagine. The sediment is ancient and completely undisturbed. The utter blackness is illuminated only by artificial lights. This place was supposed to be completely beyond our reach. Victor Vescovo completed his 2019 5 Deeps expedition dive to Challenger Deep. He became only the fourth human being to ever reach that extreme depth in a submersible. The creatures that live here are adapted to a harsh reality. The cold is absolute and unyielding. The limiting factor illuminated a landscape of we expected a pristine, untouched. The external cameras captured new species while also photographing food wrappers resting quietly in the freezing mud. It is a world completely disconnected from the surface. The discovery is a quiet and haunting revelation. The crushing pressure here
public
is difficult to even
finding
imagine.
human trash.
The sediment
already
is
waiting
ancient
in the
and
one place
completely
theoretically
undisturbed.
beyond our reach.
The utter blackness
serves as a quiet
absolute. We contaminated the abyss before we explored it. The silent depths hold on to whatever drifts down. We expected a pristine, untouched wilderness at the bottom. The creatures that live here are
finally
adapted to a
reached
harsh
the
reality.
single
The cold is
deepest point on the
absolute
entire
and
planet.
unyielding. It found a creature no scientist had ever documented, sitting a few meters from a plastic bag. The crushing pressure here is difficult to even imagine. The sediment is ancient and completely undisturbed. The utter blackness is illuminated only by artificial lights. This place was supposed to be completely beyond our reach. Victor Vescovo completed his 2019 5 Deeps expedition dive to Challenger Deep. He became only the fourth human being to ever reach that extreme depth in a submersible. The creatures that live here are adapted to a harsh reality. The cold is absolute and unyielding. The limiting factor illuminated a landscape of we expected a pristine, untouched. The external cameras captured new species while also photographing food wrappers resting quietly in the freezing mud. It is a world completely disconnected from the surface. The discovery is a quiet and haunting revelation. The crushing pressure here
public
is difficult to even
finding
imagine.
human trash.
The sediment
already
is
waiting
ancient
in the
and
one place
completely
theoretically
undisturbed.
beyond our reach.
The utter blackness
serves as a quiet
absolute. We contaminated the abyss before we explored it. The silent depths hold on to whatever drifts down. We expected a pristine, untouched wilderness at the bottom. We will very likely finish building colonies on other worlds before we finish exploring the floor of our own ocean. The deep sea is the last genuine wilderness on Earth. The deepest places on Earth are still completely unmapped. We know more about the craters on Mars than this abyss. The extreme environment defies our best technology. The deep sea remains the last true unknown. The ocean floor holds both the oldest surviving ancestors of life and the drowned wreckage of our proudest failures. It is completely indifferent to whether we ever finish charting it. It is a realm of eternal darkness and immense pressure. The biological mysteries hidden down here are staggering. We stand on the shore, completely ignorant of what lies below. The deep sea remains the last true unknown. There is the unresolved possibility that species and entire ecosystems already exist down there completely undiscovered. The blurry sonar maps hide incredible biological secrets. The deepest places on Earth are still completely unmapped. We know more about the craters on Mars than this abyss. The extreme environment defies our best technology. It is a realm of eternal darkness and immense pressure. These mysteries may be destroyed by mining waste or simple neglect before anyone ever learns they existed at all. The deepest place on Earth is losing things we never found. Our indifference threatens to destroy what we have not yet found. The corporate greed reaches even into the absolute blackness. The ocean requires our respect, but receives our neglect. The deep sea remains the last true unknown. We will very likely finish building colonies on other worlds before we finish exploring the floor of our own ocean. The deep sea is the last genuine wilderness on Earth. The deepest places on Earth are still completely unmapped. We know more about the craters on Mars than this abyss. The extreme environment defies our best technology. The deep sea remains the last true unknown. The ocean floor holds both the oldest surviving ancestors of life and the drowned wreckage of our proudest failures. It is completely indifferent to whether we ever finish charting it. It is a realm of eternal darkness and immense pressure. The biological mysteries hidden down here are staggering. Species we stand on the shore, ecosystems already exist down there completely. The deep sea remains the last. The blurry sonar maps hide incredible biological secrets. The deepest places on Earth. These mysteries may be destroyed by mining waste. We know more about the craters on Mars before anyone ever learns the extreme environment defies the deepest place on Earth technology is losing. It is a realm of eternal darkness. Our indifference threatens to destroy what we have not yet found. The corporate very likely finishes building even into the absolute other worlds before we finish. The ocean requires our respect, but receives our neglect. The deep sea remains the last genuine wilderness on Earth. Unknown. The deepest places on Earth are still completely unmapped. We know more about the craters on Mars than this abyss. The extreme environment defies our best technology. The deep sea remains the last true unknown. The ocean floor holds both the oldest surviving ancestors of life and the drowned wreckage of our proudest failures. It is completely indifferent to whether we ever finish charting it. It is a realm of eternal darkness and immense pressure. The biological mysteries hidden down here are staggering. Species we stand on the shore, ecosystems already exist down there completely. The deep sea remains the last. The blurry sonar maps hide incredible biological secrets. The deepest places on Earth. These mysteries may be destroyed by mining waste. We know more about the craters on Mars before anyone ever learns the extreme environment defies the deepest place on Earth technology is losing. It is a realm of eternal darkness. Our indifference threatens to destroy what we have not yet found. The corporate very likely finishes building even into the absolute other worlds before we finish. The ocean requires our respect, but receives our neglect. The deep sea remains the last genuine wilderness on Earth. Unknown. The deepest places on Earth are still completely unmapped. We know more about the craters on Mars than this abyss. The extreme environment defies our best technology. The deep sea remains the last true unknown. The ocean floor holds both the oldest surviving ancestors of life and the drowned wreckage of our proudest failures. It is completely indifferent to whether we ever finish charting it. It is a realm of eternal darkness and immense pressure. The biological mysteries hidden down here are staggering. Species we stand on the shore, ecosystems already exist down there completely. The deep sea remains the last. The blurry sonar maps hide incredible biological secrets. The deepest places on Earth. These mysteries may be destroyed by mining waste. We know more about the craters on Mars before anyone ever learns the extreme environment defies the deepest place on Earth technology is losing. It is a realm of eternal darkness. Our indifference threatens to destroy what we have not yet found. The core very likely finishes building even into the absolute other worlds before we finish. The ocean requires our respect, but receives our neglect. The deep sea remains the last true unknown. The deepest places on Earth are still completely unmapped. We know more about the craters on Mars than this abyss. The extreme environment defies our best technology. The deep sea remains the last true unknown. The ocean floor holds both the oldest surviving ancestors of life and the drowned wreckage of our proudest failures. It is completely indifferent to whether we ever finish charting it. It is a realm of eternal darkness and immense pressure. The biological mysteries hidden down here are staggering. Species we stand on the shore, ecosystems already exist down there completely. The deep sea remains the last. The blurry sonar maps hide incredible biological secrets. The deepest places on Earth. These mysteries may be destroyed by mining waste. We know more about the craters on Mars before anyone ever learns the extreme environment defies the deepest place on Earth technology is losing. It is a realm of eternal darkness. Our indifference threatens to destroy what we have not yet found. The core very likely finishes building even into the absolute other worlds before we finish. The ocean requires our respect, but receives our neglect. The deep sea remains the last true unknown. The deepest places on Earth are still completely unmapped. We know more about the craters on Mars than this abyss. The extreme environment defies our best technology. The deep sea remains the last true unknown. The ocean floor holds both the oldest surviving ancestors of life and the drowned wreckage of our proudest failures. It is completely indifferent to whether we ever finish charting it. It is a realm of eternal darkness and immense pressure. The biological mysteries hidden down here are staggering. Species we stand on the shore, ecosystems already exist down there completely. The deep sea remains the last. The blurry sonar maps hide incredible biological secrets. The deepest places on Earth. These mysteries may be destroyed by mining waste. We know more about the craters on Mars before anyone ever learns the extreme environment defies the deepest place on Earth technology is losing. It is a realm of eternal darkness. Our indifference threatens to destroy what we have not yet found.